blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, you are listening to episode 46 of the CoCo Crew Podcast, where we take the CoCo hobby seriously and we value your time. This is John Linville, and I am joined by most of the regular hosts here. Let's see. Hello, Mike Rowan.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Boise.
Hello, everyone.
And hello, Ron.
Y'all.
Neil has got a diversion. He might join us a little later, but he's not here right now. But time is marching on. CoCo Fest is a little more than a month away. Is everyone getting ready?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Very exciting stuff. Time for the CoCo New Year. No, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to my rejuvenating yearly road trip. Could be quite exciting. Let's see. I guess that puts Tandy Assembly is roughly 6 months away. Preparations have already started. I don't have any reservations yet there, but I'm hoping to make it this time. Could be a cool event. What about recent projects? Who's been busy? Anybody do anything cool lately?
I've been working on the CoCo Pi 3 distribution. Did a lot of updates to that. That project is pretty much, now it's just a matter of optimizing, cleaning things up a little bit. But it seemed like I did a lot more work on it in the last month or so than I've done in quite some time. Beyond this, I can't imagine too many more updates because it's got just about everything in the kitchen sink in it now. And hopefully people find it of value until they, for ones that don't have real CoCos yet or are looking for them, this might be a nice little option. I'm still going to push the drive wire features of it for people with real CoCos. So even if you're not running the emulators, there's some nice features in here for that and for development for people that don't have Linux machines, but like some of the benefits of having access to a shell and some really neat developer tools. It's a nice option.
Cool deal.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool.
Good job, Ron.
Anyone else?
I've been going through my CoCo collection and cleaning CoCos. So taking them apart, going through the cleaning process. Probably going to get rid of some. I've got way too many.
There's never too many CoCos. I've been assembling cartridges for Farfall Master Edition. About half of all I'm going to do done. Still have the other half. Got to get stickers on them and put in the box. But part of my CoCo Fest preparations.
Awesome.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and announce what I'm doing. There's been a lot of demand to get copies of commercials and bits that I've done here on the show. So I'm going to be releasing a CD called The Best of Myro.
Awesome.
That'll be about, I think it's about 45 minutes of audio entertainment. Plus, I'm also going to throw in an adventure game that I wrote called CoCo Fest Adventure.
Awesome.
So I hope to have that available at CoCo Fest, and I'll later publish how to order online.
Oh, that'll be really cool.
Well, that's been asked about a lot, Mike. I'm glad to hear you doing that. That's great.
I agree. There's a lot of demand for that.
Well, all those CoCo Fest preparations, I doubt if there's been as much acquisition. Anybody picking anything up recently? Buying on eBay or anything?
I had mentioned to you guys earlier it's not CoCo related, but one of my other older retro machines was a TI, and I picked up a peripheral expansion box for $25. Most people would say, "Why do you want that huge?" It's gigantic. It's heavy. It's something I could never afford back in the day, and I don't know how long I'm going to keep it, but at least I'm tinkering with it now, and we'll see how long I hold on to it for.
Oh, you got that.
Well, so I mean, if you only pay $25 for it, you can probably still make a profit on the scrap value.
That is true. That power supply, this thing's built. I've never seen anything like it. It looks like a mini mainframe as far as how it's built.
Well, I mean, if you're one of those people who thinks that the CoCo MPI is just too ugly and terrible to hang off the side of your CoCo, you should see the PEB for the peripheral expansion box for the TI-99.
Yeah.
The person I got it from was real nice, but he told me he used it as a printer stand. So there you go.
Awesome.
Well, that's worth.
Well, you should definitely set a big loud dot matrix printer on top of it. That'll be perfect. Well, as for me, I keep eBay in business sometimes, but I did pick up a few items of interest. So one thing that's kind of neat, I picked up, it's a controller for the Nintendo Wii or Wii U version of Rock Band 3, but it's a keytar, one of those little mini keyboards that you can sort of hold like a guitar.
Oh, yeah.
And why did I get this? Well, because I'm such a lovely good Rock Band player? No. This device actually has a functional MIDI out on it. So it truly is a 2-octave a MIDI controller. Now, I'm not a piano player, but, maybe I could be. Anyway, so I hope to maybe do at some point in the future a project involving the CoCo's MIDI controller and this thing. So that'd be kind of cool. Other than that, let's see, I picked up there's a card game collection for the CoCo on cassette tape. Looks kind of cool. And I hadn't had a chance to play with any of those yet. And then I also got one of those Colorcade Atari joystick adapters for the CoCo. So, one joystick, one port, but it's also got some sort of auto fire circuit on it. I haven't tested that one either yet, but I have considered adding an auto fire circuit to some projects. So at least I have this as a point of comparison. Well, that's probably enough of a little intro. Why don't we take a little break, and then we'll be back with our announcements.
Are you ready for the only event in North America dedicated exclusively to the color computer?
CoCo Fest.
CoCo Fest is the place to be if you want to immerse yourself in all things related to the color computer.
CoCo Fest.
Meet others who share your passion for the color computer.
CoCo Fest.
Enjoy color computer exhibits and purchase items from color computer vendors.
CoCo Fest.
Meet the people that help make your CoCo great. And don't miss the no minimum bid auction, where you may find that rare item you're missing.
CoCo Fest.
CoCo Fest is held at the Herring Point Convention Center in Lombard, Illinois on May 4th and 5th. For reservations, call the Fairfield Inn at 630-629-1500. Be sure to ask for the special CoCo Fest room rate. You won't want to miss the fun at CoCo Fest. Visit www.glensideccc.com for more information. CoCo Fest, worth the trek.
Now we're back with some announcements. As I said, this is the CoCo Crew Podcast. We are available on Twitter as at CoCoCrewPodcast or at CoCo Crew Podcast. So if you're prone to sending tweets, feel free to send a tweet at us and we might tweet back at you. Let's see, we are on Facebook. We have a page on Facebook or a group on Facebook called the CoCo Crew Podcast. It's 4 separate words. If you are on the Book of Faces, do try to come and find us. We do post a little news there from time to time and, about the podcast or about other items of interest. As I said, we are a podcast, so we are available on iTunes and through Google Play, both those for downloading through your normal podcatchers onto your, nowadays onto your cell phone, or in the back in the day onto your iPod or whatever. And we are also available for streaming on both Stitcher and TuneIn. TuneIn in particular covers the smart speakers from Amazon. If your speaker's listening, Alexa, play CoCo Crew Podcast. And hopefully we just started playing there for you. Let's see. We are primarily a radio show, really, an audio podcast. But we have been making video conversions of the show available on YouTube. So you can find us on YouTube if you prefer to to have something to look at. We'll have a little bouncing vocal track there for you to be entertained and take a peek at our show notes. Those video episodes have then enabled friend of the show, Roger Taylor, to make our show available through his CoCo TV channel on Roku.
I'd like to also remind people that you can play the podcast on your color computer with the PDC player. Information about that is available if you go to cococrew.org. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's instructions and a link to get the shows.
That's definitely true as well. So we are a member of the Throwback Network. I will try to get the proper URL in the show notes. I thought I had it last month, but it's not there this month, so who knows what happened there. We are also listed on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub, which is also a list of retro-themed podcasts. These focus on technology, particularly home computers and gaming. Audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. If you're looking for a place to host online audio content, we recommend that you check out Cyber Ears, where you will get your audio on your terms. All right, should you want to reach any of the hosts of the CoCo Crew Podcast, we have some email addresses set up. If you want to reach all the hosts, you can have your choice of either show, SHOW, at cococrew.org, podcast, PODCAST, or feedback, FEEDBACK, at cococrew.org, COCOCREW.org. Easy for me to say. And if for some reason you only want to reach one specific host or another, then let's see. I'm available as John, John. Neil is available as Neil, Neil. Mike is, of course, Mike. Boise, Boysy. Or Ron, the hardest of all, RON, at COCOCREW.org or cococrew.org. We're happy to have your email. It reminds us that we actually have listeners. Still got a line in here for Retro Challenge. As we record this, Retro Challenge, we're in our third week of the month-long Retro Challenge event for Retro Challenge 2019/03. A little bit of progress, but at first, and then mostly just some writing, and then when I actually had to write some code, I've fallen down a little bit. But some of our other competitors have made good progress, so if you like reading about retro projects, especially those with a little bit of whimsy involved, then do check out Retro Challenge and check out what our competitors are up to. These are events in real life which we believe our listeners may have an interest in attending. So coming up, March 23rd through 24th of 2019, the Vintage Computer Festival Pacific Northwest. See, that's being held in Seattle, Washington. Is that right? Living Computer Museum and Labs in Seattle. This is a Vintage Computing Festival event. They're always, I haven't been to this particular event, but I know they're always well organized and everyone seems to enjoy going to them. Looks like they've got some pretty good guests lined up, including Joe DeCure, who's more of an Atari guy and an Amiga guy as well. Could be a cool event. If you are in the Pacific Northwest part of the United States, then I recommend that you find a way to get there. March 30th to 31st of 2019, almost in my backyard, Playthrough Gaming Convention being held at, it's been held in Raleigh. 2-day gaming convention taking place in Raleigh, North Carolina. Week-long extravaganza showcasing latest games, providing an opportunity for gamers to meet others who share their passion. A little focused on more modern games, but, could be a cool event. I'm sure there'll be people dressed in furry costumes and all that sort of thing as well. So, if you are headed out to play through, send me an email and maybe I'll meet you there. Let's see, moving on. April 12th through 14th of 2019, the Midwest Gaming Classic 2019. This one comes highly recommended from Mr. Ron Klein.
Got my ticket. I'm going. Looking forward to it.
There, if you go, you can meet Ron Klein. It's at the Wisconsin Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Midwest Gaming Classic is a trade show featuring 150,000 plus square feet of retro and modern home video game consoles, pinball machines, arcade video games, computers, tabletop gaming, crane games, everyone's favorite, collectible card games, air hockey, and that's just the start. So, should be a cool event. It looks like there's a movie replica DeLorean going to be there. Ernie Hudson from the Ghostbusters, one of my favorite characters, or, well, the actor who played one of my favorite characters in the Ghostbusters. So April 12th through 14th, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Be there or be square.
The great food and drinks up there, too.
All the sausage you can eat, right? Coming up, April 27th and 28th of 2019, the Vintage Computer Festival Southeast 7.0. It's still Roswell, Georgia, right? In 5000 Commerce Parkway, Roswell, Georgia.
That's right.
It's called a VCF event. It's actually a separate group of guys out of Atlanta, still well produced. I think this is their second time at this location, Computer Museum of America, presented by the Atlanta Historical Computing Society. International event celebrates the history of computing, featuring hands-on exhibits, interactive activities, speakers, and more. So, should be a cool event. Mr. Boise's planning to be there.
I will be there, yes.
Very cool. And it's Atlanta. It's hot Atlanta. So I've been to this event a couple of times myself. It's usually pretty enjoyable. So if you're in the southeastern part of the U.S., you should make the trip. Okay, next on the docket. Now, don't listen too hard at first, because the next event, May 3rd to 5th, 2019, VCF East, Vintage Computer Festival East, held in Wall, New Jersey. It's at the InfoWage Science Center. Pretty cool event, lots of old hardware, hands-on exhibits, demos of 60s mini-computers, 70s homebrew systems, 80s 8-bitters, and a few oddities. Keynotes, Friday, May 3rd, Steve Belovin, co-inventor of Usenet. Saturday, May 4th, Ken Thompson, who co-invented Unix with Dennis Ritchie at Bell Labs. Sunday, May 5th, Joe DeCure. Joe makes it across the country pretty quick. Co-inventor of the VCS, Atari 800, and Commodore Amiga. Again, pretty cool event. If you're in the northeastern part of the United States, then I would recommend checking it out, unless you can make it to the Chicago area, because coming May 4th through 5th, that same weekend, of course, is CoCo Fest, the big event for the CoCo world. It's a great event held in Lombard, Illinois at the Heron Point Convention Center. Lots of CoCos on display, everyone's cool projects. Plus all the CoCo folks who have the same crazy hobby in common with you. Why wouldn't you want to show up and be there? Great events, no minimum bid auction. It's always fun. There is a Saturday evening dinner. Great time to hang out and enjoy some camaraderie with your other CoCo nuts. I know we'll all be there, so you can come and meet us too. Hope you can make it. May 4th or 5th, Lombard, Illinois. All right, moving beyond that, one day, June 1st, 2019, we have 5th Encontro Clube Color, Rio. If you're in Brazil or anywhere near Rio de Janeiro and you're looking for some retro goodness in early June, definitely check it out. Of our Brazilian CoCo friends, seem like a good group of folks. Happy, fun, smart, entertaining, all that good stuff. Again, if you are in or near Rio de Janeiro on early June, then be sure to check out Encontro Clube Color Rio. I'm sure I'd make it sound just as sexy as they do. All right, when you get back from Rio, headed back to Atlanta, I guess. July 12th to 14th, 2019, we're talking about the Southern Fried Gaming Expo. Used to be the Southern Fried Game Room Expo. But so this is Atlanta proper at the Marriott Renaissance Waverly. The Southern Fried Gaming Expo features more than 250 arcade, pinball, and console machines, tabletop, RPG, wrestling, music, tournaments, a vendor expo, exciting programs, and guest speakers, film festival, and so much more. Sounds like a cool event. I've never made it. Boise and Mike have been to at least the preceding Game Room Expo.
Same place. It's great venue,
Pretty cool
great
place.
time.
Yep,
Fun.
yeah, absolutely.
So it sounds like a cool event. So if you're in the Atlanta area in July, then definitely recommend you make the Southern Fried Game Room Expo. Okay, coming up, July 15th to 21st, Rockhurst University in Kansas City, Missouri. We have Kansas Fest 2019. This will be the 31st annual Apple II convention. Mark Pelzarski will be the keynote, well known for numerous graphics, utilities, books, and games. I think I have a book from this guy, but I don't know how to say his name, obviously. Anyway, we're talking about Kansas Fest. This is the summer camp for Apple II geeks. If you are interested in a week-long retro event, this is probably the only one accessible to you in North America. It is Apple II. Like I said, those folks are nice, and the Apple II stuff does wash off. So you may want to check it out July 15th through 21st. August 3rd and 4th of 2019, we have VCF West. So this is the original Vintage Computer Festival event, which went dormant for a while and then has been revived by cooperation with the VCF East people, I think. So we held the Computer History Museum in Mountain View. Hands-on exhibits presented Saturday and Sunday. Demos, that sounds a bit like the other one. Anyway, there'll be plenty of old computers to check out, and you're there in Silicon Valley, and I'm sure you can find plenty of new computers if you're interested in those too. Haven't been to this event. I know Tim Lindner has been in the past, and I think maybe Mikey has been an attendee in the past. A few others from the community. We'll need to reach out and get some more CoCo representation there.
I'm really trying to go this year.
Oh, Neil's planning to go too. That should be cool.
Yeah, really trying to make this happen.
Awesome. All right, so that's August 3rd and 4th, 2019, VCF West. September 14th and 15th, 2019, VCF Midwest, number 14. See, the website still says undisclosed location, Illinois. Anybody heard where they're going to have this? Apparently, it's not going to be at Elk Grove Village.
And I'm hoping they were going to announce it because I've been to the last 2 years of this. I really enjoy it. It's a great show. A lot of nice people there. They seem to really pack them in, so I'm sure that's why they're changing venues. They just didn't have room last year. They were really full. So, wow. But I hope they announce something soon because people have to plan for rooms and things, especially if they're traveling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, they still got almost 6 months, so whatever. But anyway, I'm sure it'll be a cool event. The planners are nice people. They interact some with us in planning CoCo Fest too. Jason Timmons in particular. I'm sure it'll be a cool event, and we don't know where it is yet. But you could go to the website. You can sign up for the VCF MW mailing list, so you'll be able to know for sure when it's announced. Good event to plan for. I'm definitely keeping my eyes open. I'm not committed yet, but I'll think about it. Although more likely in September, more likely that I'll make this little event called Tandy Assembly 2019 held September 28th and 29th in Springfield, Ohio. It's a good bunch of guys organizing that one. Let's see. Looks like they're still looking for some speakers. Looking at the website now. It's not a lot about this year's event because, it's still 6 months away. Any news to share, Mike?
Well, I will share one thing. We are looking at adding some educational sessions on Friday, the 27th.
Oh.
So we're getting some good response for that. It's still in the works, and it's not quite official, but that's where we're headed. That'll probably get an additional charge for that, but we'll post details as we get them.
That sounds really cool. I'm looking forward to that. All right. Well, that'll be Tandy Assembly September maybe 27th, 28th, and 29th, at least September 28th and 29th, 2019, Springfield, Ohio. All right. Our last event on our announcements. This will be October 18th through the 20th, 2019. The Portland Retro Gaming Expo held at the Oregon Convention Center in Portland, Oregon. This is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, retro gaming event, maybe in the world, certainly in North America. Heard nothing but good things about it. Looks like they got a lot of cool stuff, a lot of retro gaming stuff, different old consoles and old computers and whatever. Lots of homebrew cartridges for sale there. So how bad could it be? We like homebrew cartridges around here. So 212 days out, it looks like. Anyway, should be a cool event. I'd like to go. Haven't made it yet. On Portland Retro Gaming Expo, October 18th and 20th, 2019. Okay, well, that's all our announcements. I think we'll take another break, and then we'll be back with some news.
It's the one on your mind. It's a one of a kind. It's the Color Computer 2. Get yours today. Up to 64K. It's the Color Computer 2. TRS-80 color computers are better than ever. We've improved our most popular family of computers with a compact white case, low-profile electric typewriter quality keyboard, and prices that are less than last year's models. It expands easily with up to 64K of memory. The TRS-80 color computer is available only at Radio Shack. Get yours today. Up to 64K. It's the Color Computer 2. Radio Shack, a Tandy company.
It's Operation, Milton Bradley's goofy game for dopey doctors. Now for the Tandy Color Computer 3. The operating table plugs into your color computer's cartridge slot. The computer assigns each player which procedure they are to perform.
Remove funny bone.
Careful. If you touch the sides...
Oh.
You blew it, Charlie. Funds are automatically removed from your account and you earn malpractice demerits. Your colleagues are suddenly busy at lunch. Next.
Take out wrenched ankle.
A winner. Funds are transferred to your account and you earn malpractice insurance points. Enjoy the ride home in your BMW 4 Series convertible.
Ha, ha, I hate you.
Operation, a game for your color computer from Milton Bradley.
Operation is for entertainment purposes only. Operation should not be considered as any form of medical advice or medical training. Milton Bradley does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in its products. Reliance on any information provided by Operation is solely at your own risk. 128K Tandy Color Computer 3 with composite or RGB monitor required. Drink responsibly.
Okay, CoCo Cruisers. Now it's time for some news. All right, the first chunk of news, kind of consolidated 6 separate items because they're all variations on the same theme, kind of like last year, or last month, I should say. But again, Per Surratt is doing his best to be the hero of the Coco and Dragon worlds. And doing a fine job of it, I would say. And so he's given us another 6 game packs for the arcade game designer conversion tools that he's been working on. For those of you living under a rock, this is the arcade game designer is a game engine and authoring tool used to create games targeting the ZX Spectrum. But because it's it does so in a kind of formalized way, Per and his partner was it Case, I think. They have gotten a 6809 engine, and they've gotten enough tools to replicate the functionality of the existing tools, but to target them to the 6809 engine. And they've been going through all a variety of these games and converting them so that they'll run on the CoCo. Many of them in a black and white mode, some of them actually in one of the 4-color modes. Per has gone through, and he's given us 6 more game packs, each one averaging 6 or so games, 6 or 7 games. Let's see, I'd have to look and count them all. But he's gotten all the way through number 25. But all the way through number 25, which he says is the last one. Final count would be 140 games, 141 games, something like that. Wow. So quite a lot of entertainment possibilities were opened up for the color computer. What I hear, most of these games look pretty good. Haven't had a chance to try any myself, but it sounds pretty exciting. So good job, Per.
Yeah.
You're the new Jim Gary. Ding. Well, maybe not the new one, but for now, you at least definitely have that same level of status here.
Next on our list, this typewriter repairman was told computers were king. 20 years later, he's still in business.
Yeah, I thought that was just kind of a cool, I don't know, just a human interest sort of story. But even 25 years ago, I would have thought typewriters would have had a limited lifetime. But sometimes it's cool to hear that somebody's gone off and pursued what they wanted to do and made a living of it all this time.
Okay, our next item is The History of Elevator Action Arcade Documentary by Patman QC at YouTube.
I enjoy these kind of things. So, it's not CoCo specific, obviously, but it kind of gives you a feel for that general time period and the game design and whatever. I like watching kind of stuff like that. So,
yeah,
hopefully you do too.
Yeah. Next, when gamers have too much money, Super Mario Brothers game sells for 100,000 plus. That's by Carl Williams at Retro.
Yeah. Can you
crazy.
imagine $100,000 for Super Mario Brothers? I mean, you can practically tile your kitchen floor with Super Mario cards, you would think.
Yeah.
This was something, I think there's a little extra special. I forget what it was. It was something about a special version of the package and whatever else. It's not just I think it was unopened and all that stuff too, but still, $100,000. I mean, that's a kid's college education, That's a house in a lot of places.
That's crazy.
It's like the World Championship cartridge for the NES. That's up there now.
Yeah, those are nuts too.
Yeah.
The only thing special about them, right, is they've got different colored case.
I'm going to go back and look and see if I can get money for that for some of my Super Pitfall cartridges.
There you go.
Just don't let them listen to the music.
All right, next. Tetris player reaches level 33, beating former level 23 kill screen. This is by Carl Williams at Retro as well, and it sounds like, I guess this game was thought not to be, you couldn't get past level 29 because, I don't know if that was because of a bug or a kill screen.
Yeah, I'm not real familiar on the history. I'm kind of reading it through, and it says that, it says kill screen in quotes or whatever, which usually implies that there's some sort of bug that makes it impossible to get by. But maybe it just seemed impossible, or maybe if you hold a button down and pick 1 foot off the ground or something like that.
Well, somebody figured out, got all the way to level 33. That's pretty amazing. I'm sure that's big news after all these years.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not easy.
All right, our next one is Man Discovers 30-Year-Old Apple Computer Still in Working Order by Amanda Jackson at CNN. I got a kick out of this.
Well, I was going to say, if you get into the story, it kind of just sounds like any one of ours, Saturday afternoon.
Exactly.
I pulled out my old computer and I booted it up and I played with it. And that's pretty much all it was, but...
Yeah,
but it's kind of funny to think that that's big news. That oh my God, this 30-year-old computer still works. I mean, I guess even if you had a truly untouched for 30 years car and you managed to pull that one out and start it up and drive it around, that's a little noteworthy. But I don't think anybody would be all that excited about it, But a 30-year-old computer somehow, oh my God,
Yeah, no moving parts. Okay, classic video game sounds explained by experts, 1972 to 1998, part 1. This is by Wired on YouTube.
I think a lot of this is just showing these old sound guys and kind of watching them guess at the games or whatever. But they do have some good commentary about how sounds are developed and just sort of the design aspect of putting yourself in the game and what you're trying to create with the sound or whatever. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. The part 2, I think, was not as good, but anyway.
We'll stick to part 1.
Stick to part 1.
All right. The next news item is Basic Engine. Looking at this link, it looks like a single board computer with a souped-up version of Basic. Lots of features for writing code in Basic. But this isn't looks more like a structured programming BASIC than just a simple BASIC that we'd have in the CoCo. Plus, it looks like it has a lot of cool features like a Z-code interpreter. Has an SD card on it for, I guess, saving loading programs. Lots of cool stuff on this, but I don't see how to buy it.
Not 100% sure on that either, but probably judicious use of email or something will probably get you to the person. Include these from time to time, they pop up or become aware of them. But, people are it's like people want to reach out to the past and experience that basic programming or whatever, but then they don't want to mess with the old computers, or just don't, they think the 30-year-old computers can't possibly work anymore or something.
Yeah.
And so there's some of these out, and this is, another one of them. In fact, I just got the latest issue of Nuts and Bolts magazine. There's an article in there about, another, I think we actually mentioned the computer that's being used there. But anyways, it's kind of like this one, that some crossover between modern technology and retro inspiration seems to be a popular theme.
The next item is coming soon. Plato Term for the Web Browser by Thomas Cherryholmes. This is a video on Facebook. It looks like Thomas is working on Plato Term, which is a cross-platform information service, to actually work in a web browser. That's pretty cool.
Pretty neat. In some ways, this turns me on more than running it on the older machines, just because it'd be a more, less compromises in the client, I would think.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more authentic experience. But if you're interested in the, kind of that free World Wide Web online experience, then this is probably your best way to relive it, at least right now.
Upgrade your color computer with a Keytronic keyboard. The Keytronic keyboard is a simple-to-install replacement keyboard for the TRS-80 color computer from the world's leading keyboard manufacturer for computer terminals, Keytronic. Featuring high-quality full-motion keys, sculptured low-profile key tops, home row location pips, and high spring force on the clear and break keys to prevent entry error. The Keytronic keyboard looks and works like a keyboard should, with no sticking or jamming. Most users experience a 15 to 20% higher data input rate with Keytronic keyboards compared to the standard color computer keyboard. Step up to a professional quality keyboard for just $89.95. Keytronic, the responsive keyboard company.
If you use OS 9 Level 2 as your CoCo's primary operating system, you know its power and flexibility. Word processing, spreadsheets, program development. But what about tools that help you manage your day-to-day tasks? Help is here with Presto Partner. Presto Partner is an integrated desktop calendar, notepad, phone book, and more. Schedule important events on the calendar and be reminded of these events automatically. Quickly enter notes that are saved to disk and fully searchable. Get a hard copy of any note. Plus, you can perform decimal and hexadecimal calculations in any note. The integrated phone book allows you to quickly store names, addresses, and phone numbers. Search by any field. You can even have Presto Partner dial the number for you with a Hayes or Hayes-compatible modem. Presto Partner also allows you to define macro keys that can perform up to 10 OS 9 commands. Presto Partner is a RAM resident utility. It opens in its own window. Just switch to it with the clear key anytime you need it. Just how useful is Presto Partner? Imagine you're typing a letter on your CoCo when the phone rings. The call is for your spouse, but they're not home. No problem. Press clear to get to Presto Partner and Alt down to create a new note. Enter the message for your spouse, then press clear to return to your letter writer. Say you're working on a program. You need to figure out the ASCII value of A multiplied by 5. Simply press the clear key to bring up Presto Partner. Press Alt down to open a note and type in the calculation. The result is displayed instantly in the note. While working on a spreadsheet, your CoCo starts beeping and flashing red. You press clear to bring up Presto Partner, and you see that your child has a dental appointment at 11:30. You need to call the school to let them know about it. So you press Alt-P to open the phone book. You look up the number, and Presto Partner dials the number for you. Presto Partner is a complete desk inside your computer. Find out why so many describe Presto Partner as invaluable, a must-have, simply the most useful tool for my CoCo. Presto Partner requires a 512K CoCo 3 with OS 9 Level 2 and at least one disk drive. Presto Partner by Keith Alfonso, distributed by CoCo Pro.
All right, the next news item is, at first I thought I couldn't do as much with the CoCo as I can do with the Commodore by Marc Melançon. This is another Facebook video. It looks like Mark has written a series of play commands to play a song, and he's saying that programming this on the CoCo is much simpler than programming the Commodore to play the same thing, even using only one voice. Not surprising. I remember in my days in messing with the Commodore 64, it was peek and poke a lot of what you had to do to get the features out of the computer. And maybe he's comparing that to the ease of use, if I can use that term, language, basic language built into the CoCo.
Yeah, that definitely is one of the markers there. I mean, that was the trade-off we had in a lot of ways. We didn't have quite as much hardware for game stuff or whatever. But our basic, at least if you had extended color basic, significantly better or at least easier to program than, like you say, having to drop immediately to peaks and post. Of your SID trip might sound nice, but you couldn't talk to him very nicely.
All right. The next item is The Vesposian Affair. Is a pretty cool little text adventure by great friend of the show, Jim Gary. He ported it from the Sinclair Spectrum. Wow, Jim, just good work, man. This guy just keeps putting it out.
He does great work. I mean, it's amazing. And it just keeps coming, and better all the time.
The next link and show news is Prague 8 documentation. So I looked at this. This is pretty cool. It's an experimental compile language targeting the 6502 and 6510, which are the CPUs in the Commodore 64 and the Atari 8-bits. It has some sample code. It looks like a modern Swift language kind of format, based on what I'm seeing. Pretty neat. Has some sample screenshots of some programs written using this language. I like this. This is compilers, computer science type topics that I really enjoy, and it looks like it actually runs on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. Great job.
Yeah, very cool. And again, this is the definition here of not a CoCo project, but it could be.
It could be. That's right. That's exactly
and I mean,
right.
he's actually published the whole thing here, so you could definitely rip out. Well, I assume at least you could rip out or sidestep the 6502 code generation and replace it with 6809 code generation, and you could be programming in Prague 8.
The new 8-bit programming language. Very cool. Good stuff.
Sure.
The next news item is Why 80s Basic Still Matters by Gary Plowman. So this is a link on userjournal.com, or usejournal.com, excuse me. Gary talks about playing on a ZX Spectrum and writing basic programs in it, and how it still can be useful for people to learn programming techniques. It's a nice little article. Enjoyed reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, he published a book. You can get it on Amazon. That's there's a link or a picture, at least, in that webpage. Is ZX Spectrum Games Code Club, which is basically a book full of type-in programs for the ZX Spectrum. Like I said, it's a different computer, but nowadays you can get an emulator for it, or like me, you can just buy one off eBay. And so you can sit down and type those in, and it's a similar experience to what we all kind of remember from the days of the rainbow. But yeah, so anyway, he's got his philosophical argument here at this webpage. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but kind of cool.
So our next news item is Why Almost Every Pac-Man Player Grabbed the Left Side of the Machine by Chris Kohler at Kotaku. Pac-Man being the popular game it is, it's been, gameplay, various aspects of that have been analyzed over the years, but somebody, Chris in particular, decided to make the case for looking at the actual cabinet itself, noticing wear spots on the left side of many of these Pac-Man cabinets. Chris makes the case for people holding the left side of the cabinet as they use the joystick, which is centered on the in the middle on the plate where you move your character. They're saying that because most people are right-handed, they notice the wear on the left side of the cabinet. And in the case of arcade restorations, there's actually people that are not fixing the wear spot on that side of the cabinet, which is very interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of neat. Like you say, to preserve that realistic feel of it or whatever. I'm not sure there's anything like that. There probably is, but I'm not aware of it. But like in car restorations, I'm not aware of anybody leaving ripped upholstery in their restoration or anything like that. But I thought that was kind of neat to think of it, as the cabinet is effectively part of the joystick because of the way people brace on it or whatever. I don't know. It's just a neat article.
Well, it is. You just never hear people talk about that part of it. So I thought it was interesting as well.
Yeah.
Our next news item is from Tito Benestraza. I hope I'm not butchering that too much. CPU 6502 Pascal compiler, IDE, and debugger. So it looks like he's written an entire development environment for Pascal, using free Pascal as the language to create this. And it targets the 6502, 6510, so basically your Apple II, your Ataris, and your Commodore 8-bit computers. Looks like a neat project. I know we have Pascal for the CoCo. I believe there's a version that runs under Nitrous 9 or OS 9. I don't know. It's not as modern as this. This looks like it runs under Windows. It may run under different platforms, but it looks like a pretty nice project for people that still enjoy writing in Pascal.
And, like the Prog 8, there's nothing stopping you from going in and maybe adding a 6809 output Pascal for your CoCo.
I remember Turbo Pascal being very popular back in the days with BBS. Quite a few of the old BBS systems were written in Turbo Pascal.
Yep. The board I run is written in that Renegade software.
Oh, yeah, Renegade. Yep, very old.
Yeah.
Sure. There were so many hacks of different BBS systems that are all based on Pascal code, so no wonder it was so popular.
For sure.
But in any case, for those interested in it, we'll probably have a link in the show notes to it. Next up in the news, review the CoCo SDC and some other stuff. That's from Joe's Computer Museum. It's a YouTube video. Joe has a YouTube channel. He reviews hardware, talks about different projects, and it looks like this CoCo SDC one was from just a few months ago. It looked like he had a faulty floppy drive he was trying to get repaired. After deciding maybe the cost of looking for some of the parts he needed, that the CoCo SDC might be a better option. Of course, most of us know how popular the CoCo SDC is. So he did a pretty thorough review of it, and it also featured Farfall. I thought that was a great part of the CoCo SDC, which is the flash capability of it. He did a nice thorough review of that as well. So those folks out there, the few that probably don't have a CoCo SDC, it might be worth checking that video out.
Can't imagine if that had any influence on getting picked for the podcast.
Oh. All right, our next news items. We have two of Sheldon McDonald. Looks like he's got a couple grouped here together. CoCo 3 MIDI player and a CoCo 3 MIDI player part 2. He doesn't have any narration on this. It is a YouTube video. It looks like what he's doing is trying to capture some NES, like old Nintendo-based sounds using MIDI and then playing them back through a Color Computer 3. So in the first video, it shows him using some software. It looks like it's QMIDI Studio, where he's capturing some of the audio, and then it looks like he's doing some conversion work using some pokes and things of that nature to be able to play it back on a CoCo 3, and that's in the Part 2 video.
Yeah. Actually, on a Game Master cartridge for the playback.
Oh, well, that kind of goes now in line with the next video he did, which is the Game Master demo. Now, I thought this was very interesting. He's got a color computer, and it looks like he created his own case for the Game Master cartridge. He wanted something where he could get access to the cartridge easy, so it looks like it's got a nice removable lid on it. He also wrote a BASIC program where he's taking advantage of being able to use the Game Master audio from BASIC. And, Mike, I'm wondering if he used some of the information you had in your tutorials. But the other interesting aspect of his demo of the Game Master cartridge was the fact that he's wired up a controller to the keyboard. So he can use this controller to simulate keyboard pressing to navigate his game. I thought that was pretty neat. Now, I will say I'm not a fan of the huge connector he put on the side of the case, but I like the idea of that.
Yeah, it's a cool idea, neat hack. I'm not sure it's one that everybody's going to do, but it was a cool idea.
Yeah, cool to see the GMC be put through its paces there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and, in BASIC, imagine that.
Yeah. Nice and easy.
Well, Mike, you've really helped people out with your tutorials. I think you've shown that being able to access, really all the features of the GMC, including, the banked memory access is all doable from within BASIC.
It's starting to rain. I'm going to roll the windows up on the car.
Okay, sweetheart.
You've worked hard for your color computer. It took years to assemble all of the pieces. You're thinking about the next step for your system. and you're happy that the rain gives you a chance to spend time with your computer.
Oh my God! What?
Life is unpredictable. That's why CoCo Mutual wants you to think about term system insurance. Taking care of future expenses if anything should happen to your vintage computer system. It's easy. We get to know your lifestyle and your needs. Then we give you our best quote and our competitors. You could receive up to $2,000 of coverage for just $15 a month. We offer plans with no medical exam required. Call CoCo Mutual at 888-6809 or visit cocomutual.com for your free quote. It's not just your computer, it's your life.
All right, next on our news list here is an article from Tom Nardi at Hackaday, and it's SVG rendering comes to 8-bit Atari computers.
Yeah. Underneath it is the actual program is being written by Kevin Savitz. And some of us may have met Kevin. I know I have, and he definitely gets name dropped a lot on some of the other retro computing podcasts. So he's a fun dude that puts a lot of time into retro computers and a lot of time in the retro computer preservation across a variety of machines, although he's focused a little more on the Atari stuff, Atari 8-bits or whatever. But anyway, so SVG, the scalable vector graphics, a format for vectorized graphics. Basically, he's figured out how to parse the format and represent it on the Atari screen. Not a CoCo project, but it could be, right? So this is your little dose of inspiration. So.
All right, our next news article. This is one I've actually been looking forward to for a while now. I definitely have to order a few of them. From Derek Osborne, and he has finally finished his Smartwatch Plus design for the Tandy 1000 HX and SX machines. So this little gadget will give you an RTC in your old Tandy 1000 HX and the SX systems. It'll also probably fit other ones as well. By the looks of it.
And if it's, I mean, I'm not sure exactly how small it is or how tidy you need to be, but if it works on those machines, pretty good chance you can make it work on a CoCo.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, size-wise, by looking at it, it probably would be fine. You can get it to fit in a cartridge case.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially if you got a repack, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'd be perfect then. All right, our next news article is from Nick Morentis. Got a new chapter on his Gunstar development blog, chapter 15, and he has created the alien sprites for his new game.
The biggest deal is not so much that he's made that point of progress, but he's kind of gone a little bit back under wraps. So I guess he's taking it under wraps so he can finish his development and have some surprises for us.
Yes.
One surprise he notes in there is that he has brought back support for NTSC composite colors, which originally he had said he was not going to do. And in fact, I think that was a subject, or indirectly at least, a subject of one of our host discussions. He got a different palette or something from Eric Gavrlik. I guess he's satisfied with that being at least good enough. So,
yeah.
Good to hear that, at least those of us in the U.S. who might not always have our RGB monitors hooked up will still be able to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's going to help for compatibility because I don't think everybody has RGB, or maybe not RGB hooked up at the current time.
Yeah, certainly not all the time.
Right. All right, our next news article is from Dennis Wheeler. Someone I know in the Go game community wrote this in 6809 assembly. Looks like a little game here by the looks of it here.
Yep, but then if you look a little closer, and of course it's not on a CoCo. This is on the MO5, the Thompson MO5, MO6, TO7, TO8, TO9, which is a little series of 6809 based home computers in that kind of contemporary with CoCo 2 and 3, but not exactly the same, obviously. But, maybe that's interesting, and maybe it's maybe it becomes a new collector target for somebody.
Sure.
I don't have one. They're awfully expensive when I found them, but I would like to play with one at some point when I get my time machine built.
Are these Thomson computers, are these Japanese, John? Do you know?
Well, they're French.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. CoCo Dieu.
That is the correct way. All right. Our next news article here is it's a link from Amazon.com. Here we go. This actually, from what I see, this looks like a replacement you could use for the MC10, if I'm not mistaken. It's a Jameco ReliaPro AC to AC wall adapter transformer.
Someone found that and posted it, and I thought it might be handy for some people. It's as an Amazon Prime customer, I could get it here in 2 days for $13.50 or $13.58.
Yeah,
so that's not
great.
bad.
That's a
there's
good deal.
a lot of MC10s out there without power supplies, so easy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so if you got an MC10 and don't have adequate power, it might be a good option for you to get one.
All right, our last news article is from the 8-Bit Guy. It's a YouTube video. How speech synthesizers work.
He has some fans, and I think he has some detractors in the community. Don't we all, I guess? Except for Neil, he only has fans. Anyway, he does a pretty good job on this one, certainly talking about synthesizers in general and how some of them work or whatever. I think he has part of the demo shows a sound speech pack, a speech sound pack, whatever, on a CoCo. It's kind of cool. Talks about using allophones or whatever. If you don't know much about it, it'd probably be educational. So, very cool.
Little bit of controversy on that is he did not mention the TI speech add-on, which, yeah, I guess there were some people that made comments about it because that was a pretty popular accessory for the TI back in the day.
Yeah, definitely on that one, very popular. In fact, that's probably, if you have a TI-99 guy who is at all snotty about his machine being better than yours, it's probably because he had one of those speech synthesizers. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, okay, that's the end of our news segment. So why don't we take another little break, and then we'll be back with your feedback.
So you just purchased a TRS-80 Model 1 on the internet?
Yeah, it's going to be great. It was my very first computer.
So did you get a tape player and cassette cable?
No.
How about an expansion interface so you can have more RAM and disk drives?
No.
How about actual 5 1/4-inch floppy drives?
No.
You're not going to be able to do much with your TRS-80 Model 1.
No, I guess I have a lot more purchases to make on the internet.
It's probably going to take a lot more time and money to gather all of those other components, especially when you can't be sure they'll even work until you receive them.
Yeah.
Don't worry. For about the same price as all of those items, you can purchase the Model 1 system expander from Bartlett Labs.
Yeah?
The M1 SE allows you to boot directly into LDOS and access hard drive images stored on compact flash.
Wow!
It also adds extras like an SVGA port, Ethernet, real-time clock, and joystick port. You can even move software directly from your PC to your TRS-80. You'll be enjoying the entire catalog of TRS-80 software in a flash.
Where can I get one?
Just go to bartlettlabs.com for details and pricing.
Thanks.
Bartlett Labs, making your TRS-80 what it was meant to be.
Have you heard of the Fred hard drive emulator for the TRS-80?
Yeah, spelled kind of funny, ain't it?
With the Fred, you can store your entire library of TRS-80 software on a single SD card.
No way. I just finished sorting all of these floppy disks. It's beautiful.
Programs that run slowly from floppy disk run lightning fast with the Fred.
Listen, pal, I have lots of free time, and keeping my floppy disks organized is kind of my hobby.
The Fred also includes a battery-backed real-time clock.
If you can't affix gum labels to it, I ain't interested.
For information and pricing, contact Ian Maverick via email, ianm@trs-80.com.
Hey, do you know where I can find some more of those big plastic disk storage cases?
Attention M1 SE and M3 SE owners. Browse Wikipedia with TRS Wiki from PSKI Software Development. TRS Wiki allows you to search and display content from all of Wikipedia, including graphics. Display graphics in low or high resolution.
M1 SE owners can display high-resolution graphics on an attached VGA monitor. TRS Wiki supports Wikipedia searches, text-based content browsing with functioning hyperlinks, and image viewing. TRS Wiki is available as a free download from PSKI Software Development. Visit pski.net/TRSWiki.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, now it's time to hear from you. It's time for feedback. We have a couple items of feedback this time. First one comes from a real nice guy in the community, Mr. Brendan Donahue, the designer, I think, behind the CoCo VGA. All-around nice guy. I've met him at a couple of events. And he provides this feedback. He says, I find myself laughing or at least smiling at many of your ads, including but not limited to Retro Fresh, Shock Trooper, the Super Friends spoof, and the Schoolhouse Rock spoof. Is there any chance you would be willing to sell/release a collection of just these? Well, Brendan, that sounds like you're in luck.
That's right. As I said, all the ones you mentioned and more will be on the CD, plus the also included the color computer game, the CoCo Fest Adventure. So I'm planning to sell these for $20. Fun for the whole family. That'll be on there.
That's awesome. All right.
I was just going to make a comment, Mike. You better have a Sharpie ready because people are going to want that thing signed.
Probably true.
Sign
them before you put them in any kind of shrink wrap because people want the actual item signed. All right. Next item comes from Vincent Tran. This is my, at least formerly, my rival in the program pack file collection race. I think both Vincent and I have kind of reached our limit on that. I could be wrong. But so he says, he probably said something like the last episode. Anyway, episode 45 was one of my favorite episodes. Bill's interview was great. I could listen to him all day. So talking about Bill Bernico, definitely an entertaining fellow to listen to. It was a great interview. Really enjoyed that. All around nice guy. Ron, have you been hanging out with Bill since then?
Interesting you mentioned that. I just got back from my trip up north and was not able to stop. I was in communication with him as soon as I got home. I'm going up Saturday to meet with him.
Awesome.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I got a lot of, people just telling me how they enjoyed it. People who listen to the podcast tell me how they really like that.
That was a fun interview.
Definitely. That's all we've got for feedback for this month. If you have feedback, we'll definitely send it to us at feedback@cococrew.org. We'd love to hear from you. Even if you hate us, at least we'll know you're alive. So, very good. All right, we'll take another little break, and we'll probably be back and see if we can get the host on the record on something.
This month in CoCo history. Welcome to a new segment on the CoCo Crew Podcast, This Month in CoCo History. I'm Boise Pete, and each month we'll explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. For this month, let's go back to 1983. The Middle America Fest was the one and only CoCo theme fest to take place in Des Moines, Iowa. It was held at the N3 on the 27th and 28th of March of 1983. The event was sponsored by Mid-Iowa and Country CoCo, a club based out of Des Moines and run by CoCo personality Terry Simmons. The Saturday and Sunday Fest took place on a large show floor in the hotel and featured over a dozen vendors. There were booths, seminars, and lots of CoCos and 68K machines represented. Highlights of the show included giveaways and a photo booth where participants could take their picture with Mark Hawkins and Todd Earls, two of the three Muggeteers whose faces were embedded in the ROM of the CoCo 3. This was made possible since this fest was held just blocks away from Microware's headquarters, the makers of the OS9 operating system, where Hawkins and Earls still worked at the time. Incidentally, this fest would take place only a month before the 1993 last Chicago CoCo Fest, the one and only fest where Microware would have a booth. And that's this month in CoCo history.
This is a thank you from CoCo users everywhere. To Thompson's Radio Shack, now Thompson's Nail Salon, to Westside Radio Shack, now Westside Pizza, and to all the other Radio Shack stores that have gone on to better things. The stores may be gone, but the Tandy color computer lives on. Who would have predicted that Tandy's underdog computer would outlast its makers? Thank you to Radio Shack, and thank you to the vibrant color computer community that keeps the CoCo alive.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. So we're going to have a little host discussion. As you know, we have CoCo Fest coming up a little more than a month. You know, we had a special on this on one of our earlier seasons, or earlier episodes, I should say. Maybe there's some updated news or information, or maybe we've got new listeners who want to come to CoCo Fest but aren't quite sure. So we thought it might be nice to have a little recap of what kind of preparations you need to make when you come to CoCo Fest, what sort of things should you think about, that sort of thing. So, obviously, check out the CoCo Fest webpage, and I think you can find a link in the show notes to get there, and call the Heron Point, the Fairfield Inn. Use the Glenside CoCo Fest when making the reservation so you can get the special rate. It also ties you, into we know you're there, and so we can be prepared for you. But I wouldn't get there too late on Friday because you want to get a nice night to sleep before you get up in the morning for CoCo Fest. In fact, some of us have taken, we kind of like to get there on Thursday, but I'm not sure that's something the first timer wants to do. You may want to take a little drive around just to spot out where restaurants and stuff are for lunch. We joke about the live Frogger game. A lot of people have to play trying to get over to get across the road to get something to eat.
Yeah, 6 lanes of terror.
That's where the Jimmy John's is, I guess, right?
Yep.
It's worth it for Jimmy John's, though.
But there's also like a German place or something across there.
Yeah, that little pub kind of place there.
Mm-hmm. A biker bar / German restaurant. Pretty cool.
There's Burger King nearby, across the street.
Don't forget Portillo's.
Portillo's is down the road a little bit, but not too far.
Yep.
Probably want to bring some change for the tolls in case you get trapped on the Chicago toll road with with no way to turn around without paying the toll. Although I think there's signs up if you have to drive past an unattended toll booth without putting the proper change in, there is a website you can go to and rectify your mistake. So hopefully you don't get pulled over. If you're going to go at all, you probably want to make it Saturday afternoon because that's when the auction is. And the auction is, for me, is one of the best parts, other than the unofficial, hanging out with my boys, so to speak. If you can, I would, it's tempting to arrange a Sunday afternoon flight, get home kind of thing. But if you can stay later on Sunday and go out and have dinner with your friends Sunday night and make your way home on Monday, a little bit better way to enjoy the weekend, I think. You guys agree about that?
Yeah, kind of caps the whole weekend, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know. What have I left out? What kind of questions would a newbie ask?
You definitely should not be shy. Tell people that it's your first time. Try to talk to people, introduce yourself, and someone will probably take you under their wing and kind of show you around. But it's a very free-form, relaxing event. It's just a great time. You'll meet people. You'll see things you haven't seen. You'll get to know some people. Hopefully, leave with some new friends and maybe some new merchandise in the process.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good way to. We got some gear, like I said, in the auction. Usually, there's some cool stuff. Sometimes the auction items, it sort of depends. Might need to, when they're selling the half broken things, you may want to make sure you know what you're doing before you buy them. But sometimes you get some pretty good deals on things. Not all of them are strictly CoCo, whether that's good or bad. Sometimes they'll sell a pack of playing cards or
an energy drink, yeah.
Or energy drink.
Dried up ink cartridge, yeah.
Well, yeah, dried up ink cartridges, that was one time.
But all the proceeds go to the club, so it's for a good cause. And the other nice thing is the auction items are kind of out where you can view them, so you can kind of see what's going to be up for the auction before the auction starts. So if you get your eye on something early, you can, wait for that to come up.
And of course, traditionally, people in the community have kind of used CoCo Fest as sort of a milestone event or touchstone event where that's where they do their announcement of new products, or that's where they make something available for the first time. Those of you with the great taste in wanting to have a Farfall cartridge, especially the Farfall Master Edition cartridge, that's where I'll have them available for the first time, is at CoCo Fest.
Yep.
So it's a good time to come and walk the floor, see who's got stuff available, and I guess that's a good point. You may, depending on your budget and what you intend to spend, you should figure out what you're available to spend, and then try to have it in cash if you can, because nowadays lots of people do have Square or whatever, but a lot of people won't be able to take credit cards. Some of them will take PayPal. But it's good to have cash on hand. They used to need cash for the auction, although now the club can take PayPal or credit cards or whatever for the auction. So that's good. So you can spend plenty of money there.
Maybe it's a good time to introduce the new CoCo credit card with the very low interest rate.
Very good.
It should be Cityline.
For those that don't know or don't realize, the hotel is a separate building from the actual conference venue. Now they share the same parking lot. They're separated by 20 feet of asphalt or concrete or whatever. But it is a different building. You do have to go in the front door, go past the Heron, then all the way to the back, all the way to the back to the very stylish elevators, go down one floor, and then basically walk almost straight back the other way to the end of the building. Now, anyway, you kind of get turned around, but you do have to do that. Go down one floor and then find everybody. This is a very stylish entryway, but a little bit too long for me when I'm having to carry my stuff in. But usually you can find something with wheels that'll help you roll your stuff in.
Mentioned that Lombard is a very safe area. If you have any trepidation about coming to the Chicago area, this is a suburb on the far west side of Chicago, so you're not going to feel uncomfortable being there.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I've never had any problems.
No gangs or whatever roaming around. I mean, there might be, but they're well integrated. You don't notice that if they're gang people, they're hiding their identities.
I don't think that's happening.
For those going for the first time and having a table where maybe they're setting things up, it's always a good idea to have an extra power strip, maybe some zip ties to tie up cords so people don't trip.
Duct tape.
Some tape for the floors.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. These are all good things to know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I have something I started doing last year that I think might be a good idea if people want to think about ideas for getting prepared for the fest. I started starting last year, I started documenting ahead of time using my word processor on my Mac, a document that gives me the dates of the fest, the location, notes about inbound and outbound flights, because I fly to the fest and fly in and out. So I have I basically call it like a travel sheet or a number of sheets, like a little travel journal where I set up all the information in a specified format about everything I'm doing there, where I'm staying at, the lodging. And then I also have built into that document some spreadsheet cells where I basically budget my meals, my travel, my food, what I'm going to spend on what I call mad money for the CoCo at the CoCo Fest. And then I go back after I go to the fest, and while I'm at the fest, I'll make notes and I'll type those in, and then I preserve that and print it out so I have a memory of what I did at the fest, who I met, where I went each night, and it's kind of a reminder of what to do next year, or if I want to highlight something for the next time I go.
Cool.
Usually Friday afternoon, as people start rolling into the hotel, you'll start to see people gathering in the lobby, and usually later in the evening, it's pretty crowded with people talking about CoCos and catching up. So if you're new, that's definitely a place to come hang out and get acquainted with some people.
Yeah, definitely the lobby in the evening, especially a Friday evening, almost would be intimidating because how many people will be in there. But usually there's people, especially if you're there, without any significant other or whatever, there's usually some other folks there in that same situation looking for somebody to break bread with, shall we say. So come on down and look around. I've never found it difficult to spot the other CoCo Fest goers.
That's true.
You guys,
that's true.
Usually Yeah. And nothing else. It's usually from some sort of goofy geek T-shirt or whatever. But
they'll be the one wearing all the name tags.
Oh, man.
And it wouldn't be
Isn't that Chris Hawk with all the name tags?
It wouldn't be uncommon to see some CoCo set up in the lobby as well.
Yeah, just about.
Maybe also mention the kind of how the show flows, where it starts on Saturday morning, and there are planned presentations. We have the auction, all that happens kind of on Saturday until about 5. Break for dinner. They actually have if you sign up for it, you can take part in the barbecue meal that evening. And Saturday night is just kind of a free format, just hang out. People are still selling things at their tables, and it's just kind of a big free format social time that usually goes until about midnight. So that is a great time as well. Probably just as important as going to the day's worth of events.
Is there going to be a musical part of the show on Saturday night?
There's usually some people who will have scheduled, will get together and jam, play some music, bring their guitars, keyboards, whatever. Didgeridoo.
Whatever they bring.
Kazoo, you name it.
Oh, well, I must say, just talking about this, I'm getting real excited for the fest, for CoCo Fest. It's going to be fun.
Definitely. It is a highlight of my year every year, that's for sure. Kind of
this is like
my spring rite of passage or whatever.
It's like our new year.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a great time just to be able to leave all your work stresses, everything behind, and just focus on being there. It's a great time.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe that's a good place to wrap it. Any other last words of advice for newcomers or whatever, or reminders for oldsters coming? All right.
Cool. CoCo.
All right. CoCo forever. CoCo Fest is coming. Hope to see you there. If you're new, do come up, introduce yourself. I'll be happy to meet you. If I'm grumpy, it's because I'm in a hurry and got something else to do. But yeah, we'll enjoy meeting you either way. All right. Well, that's it. Why don't we take another break, and then we'll be back. We have a few more pieces of the show to put on. So see you soon.
Time to learn with CoCo House Rock.
I know that a computer has memory and disks and a microprocessor, but how does data get between all of these different things?
It's called the data bus. It's like a highway that connects all of the places data needs to go inside the computer.
Like a school bus?
Actually, it's pretty similar.
Come along and ride the data bus, taking data anywhere it needs to go. The data highway has a line for every bit, running parallel lanes all in a row. Data moves down the highway between RAM and ROM and peripherals and the CPU. When they each take turns, data gets through.
What keeps everything from talking at the same time?
No need to worry on the data bus. Control lines regulate and keep the data sound. Through decoding, every place has an address, and the destination always can be found. Data moves down the highway between RAM and ROM and peripherals and the CPU. When they each take turns, data gets through.
Okay, so data is on the data bus, but how does it know where to go?
That's controlled by another bus called the address bus. Every device has its own unique address. The address determines where you read data from or write data to.
So every device is connected to the data bus and the address bus?
Yes, and the microprocessor, or CPU, controls whether a device is reading or writing on the data bus.
So the CPU prevents devices from all sending data at the same time?
Yes, in fact, the devices can't write to the data bus unless the CPU allows it.
It's just like sending a letter. You specify an address and the data goes to that address.
That's a great analogy.
Data goes riding along the bus. Data moves down the highway between RAM and ROM and peripherals and the CPU. When they each take turns, data gets through. CoCo Crew. Everybody CoCo, 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 everybody CoCo. Data goes riding along the bus. Everybody CoCo, everybody CoCo, everybody CoCo, everybody
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We've been having these quarterly community roundtables since the last CoCo Fest, the last CoCo Fest, and this will be the last one before the next last CoCo Fest. Got to get in the last CoCo Fest humor there because I know how much Boise enjoys it. Anyway, so let's see. We have not too bad a group here. We've got, of course, Mr. Curtis Boyle.
Hello, everybody.
Mark Overholzer.
Hello there, Token Apple Guy.
Mike Rowan. Hi, Mike.
Hello, everybody.
Mr. Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, everyone.
And Mr. Ron Klein. How you doing, Ron?
Hello there. Very good. Thank you.
Sorry to have to pull you in off the snow trails.
That's okay.
Huh. All right. Well, let's just get to it, I guess. So, supposed to be a community roundtable. How do we think the community's doing? Are we still healthy?
I think so. I mean, the Facebook group keeps expanding. We're getting new faces, new names in there that I've never seen before. So,
yeah,
So, a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I figured we'd hit that a little bit later, but some of them are more trouble than others. But yeah, we got today's the big day for the 100th episode of CoCo Talk, coming up in a little less than 2 hours. So hopefully I have you guys out and free long enough where you can wash your face and get ready for that one.
Or just simulcast.
But yeah, I think the community still seems to be going along all right. CoCo Fest is coming. Had our Glenside meeting the other night, which was pretty non-eventful, I think, for the next to last one before CoCo Fest. Things seem to be settled in pretty well. All but one table sold in the vendor room. We still have plenty of what they're calling a place to call home. The smaller tables in the auction room. So if anybody's interested in having a place to set your stuff, those are still available. We have enough people paying for for the dinner that I think we're going to break even, so that's good. We have, we're pre-registering this year. I think we did some of last year, but I'm not really sure we had a good handle on it. But this year we're pre-registering. I think the current count has us in the low 60s, which I hope we grow beyond that. But even if we were stuck at the low 60s, we're still better off than we were not too long ago. So that's looking pretty good. Hopefully we'll be recording our episode 46 of this podcast pretty soon. So I think everything's going along pretty well. Anyone agree, or does anyone want to add to that or disagree?
No, I'd have to agree with that, and I'd say that you're probably going to get some people that still show up at the CoCo Fest and will register on site.
Yeah, I think so.
People just like doing that, so.
That's my plan.
We do have now the tandylist.com. That's tandylist.com is provided by Randy Weaver, and you can pre-register there completely online. You don't have to fill out any form or send any email or print anything out or anything like that. If you are interested in coming, if you intend to come and wouldn't mind pre-registering, do visit tandylist.com and just give us an idea that you're coming, because it'll make a few old guys in the club less tense. I think probably everyone on the call here is intending to go to CoCo Fest.
Yep.
Has everybody got something ready to show or talk about at CoCo Fest?
Oh, I definitely do.
Yes.
What are you going to talk about, Neil?
Cartridges.
Cartridges.
Yeah.
What are you going to have for sale?
I'll have 2 for sale. 2 new games.
Oh, yeah?
Awesome.
Just waiting for the artwork. I got to get the artwork done on the second title.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I intend to have the delayed Farfall Master Edition available this year. I've burned the final ROM image and assembled a few cards today. Tested them out. So far, so good. Need to get the labels on them, but that's moving along pretty well.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a nice game.
Yeah. Not sure what else I'll do. I was hoping to have a side exhibit of some sort, but not sure if that'll happen or not. But if nothing else, I'll just post strange pictures of Boise as a side of the exhibit. And that'll be fun.
Especially from the swamp of Louisiana or something,
Yeah. Get them covered in love bugs or something. How about Ron, you out there?
Yeah, John, I'm here. At the last minute, I went ahead and got a table. Brett actually wasn't going to get a table this year, but he did as well.
Okay.
And I think he has some stuff he's going to be demoing. Not sure if that's going to be a surprise or not, so I don't want to reveal anything. But for myself, I was just going to be a participant. However, I've been working hard on the Cocoa Pie distribution. I've made so many changes to it in the last few months. I think I'm just going to demo it a little bit just at the table. I'll have it up and running. There's always questions with it. There's always people asking, various things. So hoping to show that off a little more. And then I want to work with Mike and get some videos recorded of the product and start having those hosted as part of the show. Kind of a maybe complimentary material for the radio podcast. So
cool.
That'll be great.
How about you, Mark?
Working on networking stuff some more. Actually, I'm going to present this next weekend at the BCF Pacific Northwest. So trying to get a basic networking game set up, but I'll also be doing the Errata Online stuff too. So,
cool.
And hope to have more of that for CoCo Fest. So
awesome. And Curtis, is easy use project still your main thing, or?
Yeah. We're planning on having Beta 4 out by then. I don't know how much exactly I'm going to get done. I've got some stuff done already on it, but I kind of got delayed because it's rush season at work, so been busy with that. So that started to taper off. I'm going to try to merge the documentation into one complete manual instead of like the main first version and then like 7 or 8 little addendums of stuff. So it'll be a lot easier to follow for people just getting into it. So. And cool. I believe Ron's including it as part of his project, too, the latest updates. So I'll be making it so that he can automatically pull them off as soon as they're released.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks, Curtis, for that. Yeah, a lot of people ask about running Nitrous 9 and especially the ease of use now in MAME. And as long as people want to do that, I want to make sure it works in the CoCo Pi 3 distribution. So Curtis was nice enough to set up some static links, and I got some automation scripts that anytime anybody wants to grab the latest, they hit a button, brings it down, ready to go. So
Cool. Very good. How's the rainbow recreation? What are we calling that? Is it just calling it the rainbow, or
At the moment, the new Rainbow magazine.
the new rainbow magazine?
Figured we'd tread upon trade upon their good name.
Okay.
I don't think we'll do them a disservice. The trademark was abandoned, I think, 2004, so it's not like we're going to get in trouble. And Ron's putting pieces together. Haven't talked to him recently. I should put out a notice about 6 weeks, 45 days until everybody else's new articles for the next issue need to be turned in. And
cool.
So I know Ron has got some of it put together, and I have not turned in my article on the CoCo GMC yet, which I do have one. So that'll be in this next issue, just so you know.
Cool.
Anyway.
Cool.
So yeah, as far as I know, it's moving along. Hopefully have something at the end of the month. So we're aiming for quarterly at the moment, and I've got a few more articles from people, I think, for the next issue. So
Awesome. Now, is that a PDF release?
yeah, it's going to be a PDF, but I'm hoping to take some money and get some actually printed. So, John, have you seen the Juice GS for the Apple? It comes out quarterly.
Oh yeah, I'm a subscriber.
Okay, so yeah, something like that format. I've been talking with Ken Gagney, who publishes that, and he's been giving me some good info. So I'm thinking of something like that.
Awesome. Oh, that would be great to have that as part of the community for sure. But,
Yeah, it would be cool.
Tangible things are always nice. I mean, everybody's put out a game. I bought the game. I think I have all the current CoCo games. Oh, I don't have cartridges yet. I think I have some of those. But, it's like tangible things are nice. So I'd like to have a tangible magazine. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's great.
Any big conflicts recently? Any fights? I don't remember being in any, so that usually cuts a lot of them out.
No dust-ups.
We prefer to call them discussions.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw on the Facebook group, there was someone who seemed like a newcomer and came on and posted something, and a lot of us were asking some questions, which he didn't seem to take too kindly to, and started accusing people of attacking him or whatever, and he ended up getting booted. I don't know if you noticed that one. I guess it's inevitable we'll get some sort of troll from time to time in any of the discussion groups or whatever. I don't think that's been a big problem.
No, we haven't had too
Just
many
sort
people
of-
we've had to kick out, I don't think, out of the groups on Facebook or anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get a couple that get suspended, forbidden until they cool off, but not too many actually
Right,
right. Not too many get axed.
Usually people end up in Facebook jail for some other reason. So we don't have to deal with it ourselves. But, well, yeah, so that's going pretty good. We're all playing nicely together. Seem to be producing some cool stuff. The pair, Surratt and company, have been outdoing themselves. I'm sure you've noticed that.
Yeah, it's complete. The project's complete now, so
Yeah.
141 game ports.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That is.
Yeah, it sounds like you may be looking at a way to enhance it to include some sound. I guess some of the games include sound as well.
Yeah.
So that should be interesting what he comes up with there.
He's also asked for volunteers to do PMOD 3 style graphics too, if you want to convert them from the 256 192 to 128 192 and bump the colors up to 4.
So, yeah, so it's been a nice little treasure trove of work. Nice to be able to do some of that. I imagine it would be nice to do some of that. It's nice that he was able to do some of that and do some work on the infrastructure side and have us pick up the benefits of games that are already written.
And games still to come. I mean, they're still developing stuff under that platform too, so there's probably going to be a couple new games a year.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So it's not unlike the Sierra style games or even the Infocom style games where they're basically built around a central system and they don't have to target the CoCo for us to be able to play the game. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And unlike most of the other ones you mentioned, like Infocom and stuff, or even the Scott Adams Adventures were done under an engine as well. But these are like fully graphic and have sprites and some sound routines and stuff too. So it's much more arcadey.
Yeah. And they still seem to be coming out. That's that's the best part. I mean, there are a few interactive fiction games, I guess, that come out every year, but we don't usually see those. Just from our own laziness, I guess. But, yeah, so I mean, things seem to be going pretty well. No big negatives. CoCo Media Productions seem to be going pretty well. So you guys at CoCo Talk, not too long ago, switched your time slot.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to have shifted an hour or so, but seems to have mostly stuck. So you must be happy with it.
Yeah, we're getting more regular callers in now, and we're definitely getting some more Australians. We've been getting like 3 to 4 a call now these days. For some reason, the UK doesn't tend to get as actively involved. We get people that show up every once in a while, but they don't seem to be anybody that wants to be a regular. And in Australia, there's multiple people that want to become regulars, so it's actually helped on that.
Cool.
And it also helps, I think, for North American because it's having it before in the early afternoon just kind of divided your day up. And it was like, sometimes the show got up to 5 hours long. So basically, the rest of the day's gone by that point. You're waiting for supper. So in this case here, at least you can get your shopping or whatever else family stuff done during the day, and then it's just an evening you can devote to it. So I think that works a lot better that way as well.
Yeah, I think it is.
Well, that's good news. Gosh, we don't have that much to complain about here, and it's I guess that's a good problem to have. The media outlets are doing okay. The Facebook group seems to be mostly fine, barring a new troll. But the mailing list, I think, is not a lot to report on, but still kind of chugging along. It's doing the job it's always done. So that's good.
Yeah, Discord's not doing too bad. It's a little bit slower now than it has been, except for a few specific topic areas, but.
Yeah, Discord, the chat aspect seems to attract some people, and other people don't like it as much or whatever. It's just sort of it's good to have that there, right? That people who prefer that mode of interaction or whatever have that as an outlet. And I see a lot of ongoing discussion with forget his real name, Lord Dragon. And William Assel talking about LWSM and various programming topics.
Yeah, Lord Dragon's just learning assembly, so he's got a lot of questions. He's just learning the 609 itself, too, so he's wondering, does this index mode exist? No, you have to do it this way.
Yeah, some of those are funny, but yeah, it's pretty cool. And that probably, like I say, that wouldn't do real well in the Facebook environment. And probably would eventually draw some ire as an email thread, I imagine. But kind of in that isolated section of the chat, it's fine, like, what'd you come here for if you didn't want to see that sort of thing?
Well, the nice thing, too, is because of the organized groups under different topics, if there's certain things you're just not interested in, say you're like James Jones and you could care less about games, so you just don't read those particular ones. You just, close them off and you start reading the stuff you want to read. I'm a bit of a nut. I try to read everything, so I just get lost in it sometimes.
Me too. Yeah. I get behind. So I have a lot of things that are tagged that haven't been read for 2 months. Anyway, but I'll get to them eventually.
Well, you never know. Someday we'll retire, right? And you have all the time in the world.
Yeah. Now, Mark, I haven't had as much time to be in there on the voice chats on Discord. Do you know if those are still going fairly heavy? Are those kind of cooled off a bit?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, cooled down a little bit. I think there's only been people on there about 3 or 4 out of the last 7 days. There wasn't anybody last night, but there was the night before, and the night before that. So,
okay,
cool.
Not that Discord solves everything, but one of the things I like about it is it's easier to search for past conversations, files, and other things in Discord than it is in Facebook. Facebook is terrible for that.
Yep.
Right. And also, if I find those and look relevant, I'll pin them so you can just go to the pins and see the important things. So.
Yeah, you do a great job with that, and I've used it. It's actually very handy. So, from a collaboration standpoint, I don't know if Discord's right now the most used thing. I still hang out in IRC sometimes. There's not many people there, But I'm glad at least we have somewhere to go to be able to share, files, screenshots, different things like that. So
the other thing that's nice about Discord is it's like a little bit like IRC, but also it has clients for iOS and Android. I mean, I have it on my iPad, I have it on my Android phone, I have it on Ubuntu, Windows, and Mac. And so whatever you use, you can have it, and so you can be in on the conversation. So.
Yeah, as sick as I am with the console, I actually found there's a text-based or a console-based Discord client, and I started toying with it, and then I stopped. But
have to port that to the CoCo.
So well.
That's not the worst idea, right?
Well, it's just text. That'd work perfectly. Wouldn't be high bandwidth or anything, so wouldn't be able to do the voice chats, but.
Right, or attach graphics very well, but the other stuff, a lot of stuff, just fine.
Yeah, but you're right on Facebook. Facebook has this annoying habit to go, "Oh, that looked really interesting to you. I'm going to push it off so you never see it again."
Right. Well, I don't know if it's just my particular browser or what, but when I try to scroll back in Facebook, it's like it scrolls and it's like I can see it or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like shoots, and even if you go back just a tiny bit, there's 8 pages worth of stuff that's shot by. It's like I didn't move 8 pages worth with my mouse, but anyway. But yeah,
it
just
inserts new stuff for you.
Yeah, so it's a singularly bad resource for searchability.
Yeah,
and it's kind of funny to think that the alternative, the big rival to Facebook in some ways is Google, which is built on search. Well, of course, I don't know if Google Plus was any more searchable either, but I guess it doesn't matter since it's gone away or going away. Tandy Assembly is just a half a year away. If you miss CoCo Fest with your new project, you can still take that to Tandy Assembly.
Have the details, dates, and stuff all been released for Tandy Assembly? I haven't had a chance to look.
There are dates. What are the dates, Mike?
It's the last weekend in September, so I don't remember them off the top of my head right now. I don't know if we got them out on the website now or not. I thought we did, but
cool. And that's the same location as the previous year?
Yeah, and it's going to be in Springfield, Ohio. One of the things, we're working on some new things this year, and we'll be announcing that pretty soon. So it should be a good year for us at Tandy Assembly.
Yeah.
Lots of positive feedback on the location. People liked it. Plenty of power. Everything worked out really nicely. I'm very happy overall.
And there's a heron, so you can still touch the heron.
That's right.
And still access to our roosters too, right? How about you?
That's right. That's right. We were there last year. Got to have our roosters.
Oh, man. I don't think we need to drag this out. I'd say it's a community roundtable. Things are going pretty well. We don't have a lot to discuss. Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's nice that everybody does have these, top secret projects that are released to Fest, because that means there's going to be a lot of stuff getting released. So it's definitely a reason to come down to it, because there's going to be surprises.
Definitely. Everyone, again, if you're within 4 hours of Chicago, you're morally obligated. Was that the limit? 4 hours? 6 hours?
Yeah, 4 hours is a moral imperative, yes.
There you go. Moral imperative that you make it to CoCo Fest. So, CoCo Fest is coming May 4th and 5th. May 4th is the International Chicken Appreciation Day. Hence my...
So the evening meal? Evening meal, do you have chicken with it?
I think there will be chicken. There's also pulled pork. Surprisingly good barbecue for Illinois, if you ask me. Speaking as a boy from the South. But yeah, pulled pork and barbecued chicken and other kind of barbecue sides.
There's even some bacon stuff
such
for the people that don't want to eat meat for some odd reason.
That's true. I guess we can draw this to a close. Everyone make sure you get out to CoCo Fest. And like I said, things I say are in the community are going pretty well. No major fights. Projects are ongoing. Curtis, Mark, Mike, Neil, Ron, thanks everyone for joining, being part of the discussion here. Enjoy it. That's pretty good news.
Is your finger worn out from pressing the joystick fire button? Then you don't know jack. Jack, the joystick alternative controller. Attach Jack to your color computer joystick port, then connect any Atari-style joystick. Plus, Jack features a unique rapid-fire option. Save your fingers, save your wrists. Get Jack for just $22.50. And what about pausing that game? It's easy with Stop. Stop plugs into your CoCo's cartridge slot, multi-pack interface, or Y cable. Simply press the button to immediately halt your computer, and press it again to resume. Works with all software. Stop is just $14.95. Jack and Stop are both fine products from Vortex, Merrifield, Virginia.
Check and money order accepted. American funds only. Postage and handling not included in list price. Canadian orders add $4. Allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery.
All right, welcome back, CoCo Cruisers. We have a treat for you today. We have an interview with a CoCo celebrity or developer, at least from the past, Mr. David Wiens. And he was associated, perhaps the main driving force behind Stardust Technologies. And, of course, they're famous for the DMC floppy disk controller, no-halt controller. That's the intro. So, welcome, David.
Well, thank you.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got started in the industry in general and how that led up to your involvement with the CoCo.
Well, there's all kinds of things I could start with. Really, my interest started when our school library at the end of grade 6 got a new book and talked about science and included computers and the binary number system. And for some reason, that clicked. And ever since then, I've been interested in computers. So throughout high school, I was interested, but never actually had access to a computer because this was, remember, in the 1960s. The closest I got to seeing a computer, we had a Digicomp 1 mechanical computer in the math room. Of course, it's like a 1 or 2-bit computer. The first time I saw a real system was around Easter time of 1969 when I was in Vancouver, BC, and I was in the IBM building, and they had an IBM 360 in a room that looked out with floor-to-ceiling windows onto street. Remember, this was before all this stuff with terrorism and stuff started, so they were trying to show off their computers. I didn't actually get to do any programming until 1974. I was at college, and they offered their first ever introduction to computer programming course. And the only computer they could afford was a used HP 9100B programmable desktop calculator. It had conditional branching, so it could do real programs. I knew from that point on computers were in my life, so I signed up for a 2-year programming course at BCIT, that's the BC Institute of Technology in Burnaby, BC. Most of our stuff was done on an IBM 370, and much of it in assembler and PL1, some Fortran. They also had an HP 2100A mini computer, which after the first semester, almost nobody used except for me. So I had a lot of fun programming chess and an IBM 370 instruction emulator, at least a partial one. And after that, of course, I got jobs, and it's sort of been in my blood ever since.
Well, you were saying earlier that you didn't particularly feel like you were a totally CoCo person, and that you were had more involvement with the SS50 bus.
Yeah, well, my very first computer that I bought, a computer board, was actually a Motorola evaluation kit, the MEC 6800D1, which I built into I added an 8K memory board. After about 2 years of using that, I bought a Southwest Tech 6800 system, the SS50 bus, which I eventually converted to 6809, and of course fell in love with the 6809, as so many of us have. So I used that for a few years, and of course I knew about the Radio Shack color computer, but there were some things I didn't like about it, like the keyboard, because I'm a touch typist and I needed a real keyboard. 32 character lines of uppercase only, wasn't exactly what I was into, so I did not buy a CoCo 1 or a CoCo 2. But then when I decided I wanted something a little more compact than the SS50 bus system, I decided to develop my own system, but of course the color computer was the huge inspiration for it, with the SAM chip and all of that sort of thing. So in many ways, my ST2900 was like there were aspects of the color computer, except it did not have the built-in video. But of course, once the CoCo 3 was announced, that was a different story.
So the CoCo 3 was a little more of a real computer, I guess you could say.
Especially once the Radio Shack announced they were going to come out with OS 9 Level 2. That I couldn't pass up. I mean, OS 9 Level 2 at the time was quite expensive. Well, both the operating system was expensive and the machines to run it on. You could easily spend $3,000 or $4,000 at the time to get an OS 9 Level 2 system.
Oh, sure.
And for the CoCo 3 and their discounted price of Level 2, wow, it was like a fraction of the cost of the other systems. But there was, of course, something I still didn't like, and that was the floppy disk controllers halted the computer while they were accessing the floppy disk, which kind of made the multitasking aspect of the operating system not work as well as it could.
Right. Dave, I want to touch on your OS 9 experience and your familiarity with the operating system prior to the CoCo. You said you had an SS50 bus-based computer. So obviously you were familiar with the 6809 prior to the CoCo or prior to the CoCo 3.
I never ran OS 9 on the Southwest Tech, but I ran OS 9 on my ST2900.
Prior to the CoCo?
Well, my ST2900 was designed after the CoCo 1, and I started shipping it in 84, but I was starting working on it in late 82, so it would have been CoCo 1 era.
Yep. CoCo 1 into CoCo 2.
Yeah, but once OS 9 came out for the CoCo at a discounted price, then, of course, I certainly planned on finding a way to adapt it to my ST2900.
And, of course, you are right. The OS 9 for the 6809 for non-Radio Shack customers was quite a bit more in price than the $79 or $99, I think it was, that Radio Shack sold OS 9 Level 1 for back in 83 or 84 when it came out. So that obviously had to be a big attraction. The kernel, as I recall, in OS 9 Level 1 for the CoCo 1 and 2, I don't know if the kernel could be adapted to any 6809 computer at that time. It probably could, but I know that there were other modules that were specific to the CoCo that would probably have made that much harder. Did you just go out to Microware and directly buy a copy of OS 9 for the ST2900?
No, I did not. What I did, I actually hand disassembled, I think, all of OS 9 P1.
Yep.
And obviously, guess the boot module.
Yep.
And I think there was one other little module. I hand disassembled them to understand, because that's basically where the startup happens.
Right. That's correct.
But there was only minor, because I was running the SAM chip in the ST2900, so it was very similar in that sense to the CoCo. It was more the peripherals in terms of keyboard, display, which weren't really that tied into that module. So I wrote a program that would automatically delete the modules that were CoCo specific and insert the modules that were ST2900 specific. And with no programming on the customer's part, they could take the CoCo OS 9 and generate as ST2900 specific bootable disk.
That's pretty cool.
So what were you doing with the computer? What kind of applications, what did you make the computer do?
The ST2900?
Yeah.
Well, it was my main computer, and of course, I was developing things. So I used it for my own. I ran all of my accounting software on it.
Sure.
Because once I started, of course, shipping the ST2900, I needed to have a way to deal with inventory, parts, assemblies, modules. I actually ended up writing my own accounting software using a database package for OS 9. I used it as my, for word processing, but a lot of it was just in turn developing other related projects or products.
Sure. No, that's cool.
What was your terminal of choice to use on the ST2900?
By that time, I believe I was using the ST2900. I had bought a used Cybernex MDL110. This was a terminal that was developed, I think, in Ontario. It cost me probably $700 used.
Wow.
And I thought it was a good deal.
Yeah, back then, yeah.
So you were selling the ST2900 before the CoCo 3 came out. And you were using, I'm assuming, a serial interface for the terminal. There was no video display on board.
That's so.
So the CoCo 3 comes out in 1986, right? And it has 80 columns and more memory and MMU and things like that. I'm looking at, actually, in the September 1988 issue of the Rainbow I have up here, I'm looking at on page 145 an ad from Sardis Technologies for the DMC no-halt disc controller. $137.50, which is not bad at the time for all that it did. This design, obviously it was in the September 88 issue, so I didn't go back and see if it was in prior issues. But this design was released, I'm assuming, sometime after the CoCo 3 came out in 86. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, it was the announcement of the CoCo 3 that caused me to start thinking about designing this controller. So it was announced, I believe, It
was announced July 30th of 1986 and came out around September, yeah.
Right, okay, so probably by the beginning of August I would have heard of it and started to think about designing the controller. I certainly wanted something that would be no halt, and there were certainly for the SS50 bus systems, there were no halt type of controllers, either that used DMA or that just used a buffer RAM. And someone had given me the schematics for the smoke signal broadcasting floppy disk controller for the SS50 bus, and it had a 256-byte buffer SRAM. So I thought, okay, well, that I can work. DMA is either too complicated, and I don't think that the CoCo expansion connector design was such that I'm not sure if DMA to main memory was even possible. But I thought, well, 256 bytes of SRAM, but that's only going to allow me to read and write individual data sectors. But what about formatting? So I said, no, I'm gonna have an 8K, because by this time, of course, memory is getting cheaper. So by having an 8K SRAM, I could format the disk in no-halt mode, which I believe the disto could not do.
That's correct. I have one of these controllers. I've had it for years, and I've considered it a valuable part of my CoCo collection. I think the Sardis DMC was the Cadillac of no-halt disk controllers. One of the reasons you mentioned the larger buffer size. I thought it was 32K, but it was an 8K SRAM chip, right, that was in there?
Well, that was standard, but you could optionally get 32K, and with the 32K, then the later software implemented optional caching.
Yeah. If you look at the board, I mean, there's a lot of TTL logic on it, so it obviously looks like a fairly complex design, and I commend you for it. Like I said, it was always a great performing disk controller in my collection.
Well, one reason why there are that many parts on it is I'm a conservative designer. So when I look at the data sheets for the various ICs and look at the typical and maximum and sometimes minimum, the propagation delays, I tried to design it so that it was going to work in the entire temperature range, because if all you do is use typical values, then at the extremes, it might not work. But that sometimes takes more logic chips to get the timing right. That's partly why there are that many chips, which unfortunately cost money, take up a lot of board space, and draw a lot of power. But as a result, it's also very reliable.
I notice, I'm looking at the ad, there were gold-plated card edge connectors for reliability. As you indicated, 8K bytes of cache memory on board, 32K optional. No adjustments, all digital data separator and write pre-compensation, disk caching software. And I noticed you worked with D.P. Johnson's S-Disk. Did you work with Mr. Johnson on his package? Did you have a relationship with him to get this to work for the DMC?
I licensed it, so he gave me the source code, and I then paid him X number of dollars per copy that I shipped.
Yep.
So I had originally started that relationship with my SD20 and 900. Part of it was because he already had the formatting software, plus he also had enhancements to the driver so that you could then have optional software to read and write MS-DOS disks and that sort of thing. And so I thought that would be a wonderful selling point. And once I designed the DMC, I licensed S-Disk 3 from him for the CoCo 3.
I'm not looking for specific dollar amounts or numbers, but how well did this sell for you, the DMC?
Well, let's just put it this way. I went into debt. By the time my inventory was running low and I didn't build any more, I had not made real money from it.
Really?
No.
That's too bad.
The total number of units sold of the DMC is approximately 200. So
that's why I can't find one anywhere.
Yeah, they are hard to find.
and the first ones were not shipped with the little PAL 4 board on it. So if anybody that has the DMC with the PAL 4 board in it, I mean, that's probably could be considered a collector's item.
The PAL 4 board, that was a daughter board?
Yes. What happened was, and this is partly what disillusioned me a little bit with the whole color computer ecosystem, was that the expansion connect, or especially like the multi-pack interface, did not allow you to interrupt the CPU from any one of the 4 slots, regardless of which slot was selected. IRQs were only generated by the slot that was currently selected.
Right.
And so there were other ways. A person had to use virtual interrupts or other things, and none of them were ideal.
Right.
And I had started shipping the hardware before I had fully thought through all of those issues.
Yeah.
So although it works fine as is, but I then came up with actually 3 different alternatives for the driver, and realized, unfortunately, that the original hardware could not support all 3 of those drivers. And that's where I ended up then designing that PAL 4 daughter board, which was unfortunate. It increased the cost, and it meant that the early customers didn't have it, and I never got around to shipping them as upgrades. It was my intention, but that never happened.
Do you know if it was about a year or 2 that you sold this controller?
I started shipping the hardware with preliminary software and documentation in July '87. By the time I stopped advertising, that didn't mean that I didn't have more units in stock or I wasn't shipping. It just meant that my revenue was so low I could not afford to continue advertising.
Correct.
And I certainly could not afford to attend Rainbow Fest, because I lost money every time I attended a Rainbow Fest.
So which Rainbow Fest did you attend, Dave? Do you remember?
Well, the very first one I attended was when I only had my prototype. And that was in October '86 at Princeton. So I had my working prototype, which was pretty kludged together thing, but it was working. But since I didn't have a booth, I just had it in my hotel room, and I did invite several interested people who I had mentioned it to my hotel room to look at it. I can't remember if I actually demonstrated it running, because I don't think I had taken my CoCo 3 and multi-pack and everything along all the way from Canada. The next Rainbow Fest was April '87 in Schaumburg, near Chicago. I probably had, my design was, the hardware was completed, but I wasn't quite ready to ship. So that's when I had interested people fill out discount coupons with their mailing address so that I could let them know when the controllers would be ready to ship. By April '87, no one else was yet shipping a no-halt floppy disk controller cartridge, although Hemphill or whatever, the separate...
Yes, that's right, out of California. That's right.
That one might have been shipping, but that was like much more expensive.
Yes.
It was a lovely design, but very expensive.
Yes. That one you're talking about was advertised early on in the Rainbow and the CoCo 3's heyday. The Hemphill controller had a large hard disk enclosure on the side of it that you could connect to it. It was really not for RS-DOS or disk basic usage. It was purely an OS9 CoCo supercharged controller.
That's right.
Yeah, but very expensive compared to your controller and others. I remember.
But I believe that Dan Johnson, DP Johnson, was involved in that design. Now, I went to at least the next Rainbow Fest, which would have been, Princeton again.
Mm-hmm.
And this time I had units I was ready to deliver. So, unfortunately, U.S. Customs and Immigration would not allow me to sell anything at my booth because I was a Canadian, and that would be considered working without a work permit. So I had to leave all my controllers at home and only take orders to be shipped later. Yeah. So I had a lot of, in effect, handicaps, a lot of things that made it much more difficult for me as a Canadian than my American competitors.
I wonder if Disto had the same restrictions when they would go to the CoCo Fest.
I think they had distributors in the U.S., so probably the distributors were considered to do. The American distributors were the ones manning the booth, technically.
You're probably right, because Howard Medical was one of those distributors for Disto. There were some others.
And I wasn't big enough to afford that sort of distribution, so I was just a one-person company.
Right.
Well, there were other issues as well. My ST2900 I just shipped via parcel post from Canada. But since most of my customers were, of course, in the U.S., I figured maybe in the color computer market they might not all be that familiar at purchasing from another country. So I decided to ship all of the DMC controllers from the U.S. because I live not that far from the border. But that meant that every time I had a few controllers to ship, I had to drive to the border about an hour away, wait in lineups, clear the parcels through U.S. Customs, ship them via UPS, and I could only ship 4 or 5 at a time. Otherwise, the total value would have been such that U.S. Customs would have required me to use a customs broker at a few $100s per shipment.
That's crazy.
My U.S. competitors probably had UPS pick up the packages at their front door, so that all took a lot of time away from working on software and documentation and increased my expenses. And not that I'm trying to just complain, but those are real business issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. There are obstacles.
Raise your costs, no doubt. I mean, wow. I still think that the controller was and is a great controller. And it's just too bad that, you had those issues. But now that you say if you've only sold 200, as John's indicated, it's no wonder you can't find these things around anymore. They are very rare.
Right.
And highly sought after.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Was this your full-time gig, or did you have to work a side job or was this big enough to feed you and your family?
Well, fortunately, I was single, so I didn't have a family to support.
Okay.
And I had pretty much paid off the mortgage on my house, so my expenses were very low. But yes, I was doing this as a full-time thing for several years, whereas I'm pretty sure, I think people like Tony DiStefano, I think they all had full-time jobs and did this as a sideline. I just never could work fast enough to do that. I never had that kind of energy. So for me, yes, I did it full-time for about 5 years. And
wow.
No, I did not make a proper living from it. I went into debt, but having said all of that, do I regret having done it? No. I am
the dream. So the name Sardis, where does that come from?
I grew up in the community. It's the Chilliwack area in British Columbia, and our mailing address was Sardis. I went to a school called Sardis, so I figured even though I was no longer living there, I figured I'd honor them by using the name Sardis.
That's
a cool name, by the way.
So no specific relation to the ancient city in Turkey, I guess.
Well, yes, in the sense that I believe that's where they got the name from in the first place, to name the town.
Right. Well, that's cool.
Dave, do you have any of the documentation or schematics or anything for the ST2900 or the DMC around? Anything survived?
Well, somebody, I think even, I'm not sure with or without my permission, a few years ago had actually posted the DMC schematics online. However, I am in the process of eventually putting up some web pages that will include all of the documentation that I can find and have time to sort of format correctly. From my point of view, I'm not planning on selling any more of these, so I want to, if possible, document all of this to be publicly available.
What's kind of ironic is that with today's layout technology and step technology, you could probably consolidate the Sardis design into a fairly small CPLD.
Yeah, sure. It probably. Well, the question is the floppy disk controller chip itself.
Yeah.
There, you would probably need an FPGA to implement that.
Correct. That's true.
The other issue that increased my costs was that because of there being so many chips on the board, and the company that did the layout for me did it for a fixed price, so they took the easy way out and made it a 4-layer board. And in those days, 4-layer boards were quite expensive. So that really cut into my profit margin just right there, whereas now I could do all the layout myself, and I could have squeezed it into 2 layers, I'm sure.
I can only imagine how you had to lay this thing out.
DMC was laid out with CAD software. I don't remember which pack the company used, but it was done on a PC-AT with an EGA video display and a pen and ink plotter. But the SD2900 a few years before, that was all done with tape, blue and red tape on plastic. So I digitized one of them, which will be up on my web pages when I finally get them up there.
That's impressive. Are you familiar with a CoCo guy by the name of Wes Gale?
Yes. He was living in my area at the time. I guess I know of him in more than one way. One is that he actually licensed my QuickGen software from me. And so he sold QuickGen. It was actually advertised in Rainbow Magazine for a while. So that QuickGen was my software, and he licensed it.
I didn't realize that. That was the boot file creator?
Yes.
Just for the record, on Telecomputer Archive, the manual and the schematics for the DMC floppy disk controller are available.
At this point, it doesn't matter because it's all going to be publicly available with my permission. So.
Boom.
Great.
Now, the other question you had was, whether I still had some of that information, and although I had, paper copies of some of the manuals, thought it would be nice to have the actual original text to be able to reformat it. My big project from 3 to 1 years ago was I wanted to read all of my old floppy disks that contained all of the source code, both for the software and for the manuals.
Right.
And since some of these disks were, up to 35 or more years old, I decided to build my own hardware and software to digitize the floppy disks. More or less finished that a year ago, and so far I've captured 130 floppy 5 1/4 inch floppy disks, all 130 disks with 0 errors. So the old floppy disks were actually good quality.
Did you use an Arduino or a similar microcontroller by chance to control that?
No, I like to do everything bare metal. So I don't like to use other people's software. I like to do my own. So what I did was, actually you can see all of a picture of it if you go onto my website. The UFDR is what I call it, Universal Floppy Disk Reader. No, it uses an MSP430 microcontroller from TI to control the drive. Then I have a CPLD and a high-speed analog to digital converter to capture the analog as well as the digital signal. And then I have software that decodes it in software, and if necessary, I can tweak some of the coefficients to increase the chances of successful decoding.
That's awesome, Dave. Really, really cool.
So what is your training? You're doing a lot of high-tech stuff. Are you an electrical engineer by training?
No, I took a 2-year diploma course in computer programming and systems at the tech school.
Okay.
And everything else is just learnt by reading magazines and data sheets and app notes.
Wow.
One of the real useful things was, some of in the early days, or in the 70s and early 80s, the magazines, like whether it was Popular Electronics or Byte magazine with Steve Ciarcia, had a lot of projects that you could build. So they had the schematics, they had the theory of operation. I just learned a lot of that on my own. So the electronics, I am totally self-taught, but because I like to be careful, I had very good results. My designs were, on the whole, very stable and very reliable, even more so possibly than some of my friends who had electronics training, but were a little cocky and decided to cut corners.
Right.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Nowadays they go to print something, and there's always somebody who's going to say, "Oh, people don't care about all that tech detail. Just dumb this down for whoever." And
Well, I was so disappointed when Byte magazine changed from a magazine that explained how things work to just reviewing it from a user point of view.
Right, definitely a loss there for at least for us propeller heads, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, so it's one of those hard to imagine that when we were kids, they were literally teaching grade school kids how to program in assembly language. Now, if you teach college students in computer science, if you threaten to teach them assembly language, they're probably all mutiny on you.
Well, yeah, you're right. At BCIT, our very first programming course was actually Fortran 4, but after that, we did a lot of IBM 370 assembler. So, yeah,
so that's a labor of love.
It sure is.
Do you have any CoCos left around?
No, the only CoCo I had, which was the CoCo 3 I used to develop the DMC, I sold to Westgale.
So back to the ST2900, what motivated you to design that?
Well, I was using a Southwest Tech at the time, which I had upgraded to a 6809, 64K of RAM. The floppy disk system I had on there was Southwest Tech's sort of original, which was just 2 single-sided, single-density 35-track floppy disks, 75K each. There were some issues with the SS50 bus with the connectors because most of the companies like Southwest Tech sold tin-plated rather than gold-plated connectors. And it took up a lot of space and so on and so forth. And so I decided I wanted a much more modern, much more compact system. And I figured if I wanted one, maybe other people did as well. That's where I decided to design it. But I did certainly borrow ideas from the CoCo in the sense of using the SAM chip so I could use inexpensive DRAM. I decided to split it into 2 boards, so that the first board, the CPU board, for some simple applications could actually run by itself. And then the second board with a floppy disk controller and parallel printer ports could be used to expand it, or people could plug in a custom I/O board. Then eventually, of course, I came up with a third board, the RAM disk board. Being a slightly more modern design than the Southwest Tech, it just made for a very compact system which actually matched the size of the new 3.5-inch floppy disk drives that were just coming on board at the time. So it made for a nice, compact little system.
It's a great interview. Good to meet you, Dave. And like I said, I've always been a fan of your Sardis controller and appreciate the work you put into it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the interest.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Yep, Dave, it's been a great interview. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Well, thank you so much.
The Himalayas, Nepal.
You have traveled far seeking answers.
Yes, I seek the ultimate happiness.
You may see the Master now.
Your Eminence, I've walked for 10 days for an audience with you.
Dude, come on in here.
Am I in the right place?
Totally.
You hold the secret of true happiness?
Yeah, check it out. It's Screen Machine.
The ultimate graphics text screen enhancer, Screen Machine, is a machine language extension to BASIC that enables you to easily mix high-res graphics and text in your programs. A user-definable 224-character set featuring true lowercase and graphic characters like cars, planes, tanks, and more. Support mixed text modes from 8x16 to 64x24 with full print at, tab, and comma fields. Full support of underline, subscript, superscript, reverse video, top and bottom scroll protection, double width, and full color characters. Screen Machine can be used in games, word processors, utilities. The possibilities are limitless.
You're right. This is true happiness.
Gnarly.
I better go now. I have a 10-day walk back ahead of me.
Dude, that's totally military. I took the helicopter.
Screen Machine from Sugar Software.
All right, welcome, CoCo Cruisers, to another one of John's off-the-cuff tech segments. See, the topic this month is going to be real-time clocks in general, and then related to the CoCo. And so what started all this discussion? Over the past couple of months, there's been some of the community that started nearly rioting to have real-time clocks either added to other devices like the CoCo STC, or somehow made available, through the multi-port interfaces, or just wherever. In some quarters, in the quarters of the community that just loves to repeat a bad joke, has been beaten to death with one bad refrain after another. What is a real-time clock? Why is it useful? I will say, let me just divert with a story. I've heard for years about the smartwatch modules, and kind of wondered about them back in the day. It's like, well, what is a smartwatch? What was Tandy selling? What was so smart about it? Whatever. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later, but basically, the smartwatch was also known in the Apple II world as a so-called no-slot clock. No slot, meaning that you could install this piece of hardware without taking up one of the expansion slots. And in fact, that's sort of how it was used with the CoCo and also in the Tandy 1000, which I think is really what Tandy marketed it for, was the Tandy 1000. But basically, it's like a souped-up socket with a kind of a hidden circuit board inside for, you can put it in place of a ROM socket and plug the ROM into the top of it. It makes a real-time clock accessible, and I'll go into how that's possible in a minute, I think. But so Nick Morentis was asking about, I guess he was asking about the Game Master cartridge, which has a ROM socket, and could a smartwatch be made to function with the Game Master cartridge? Seemed like it could be to me, but I never actually tried it, so I thought I should try it. I actually had picked up from an electronics surplus supplier a couple of years ago, a sleeve of brand new DS1216E chips or sockets or smartwatch, whatever you want to call them. And so I never tried to use them. Thought it'd be a good thing to try to use and see if they work. In the process, I got some help from Mr. Robert Galt, or Dr. Robert Galt, Mr. Art Flexer, the ADOS guy, and helped me with some software so that I could run it on the CoCo. Got the disk images up under DriveWire and run it on my CoCo 3 with a Game Master cartridge plugged in and a smartwatch plugged into the ROM socket on my Game Master cartridge developer board. And I had to tweak it a little bit. Had to make sure the ROM, the bank switching was set to a certain way. And but it did work, and so that's kind of cool. So anybody who was dying to make use of a Game Master cartridge with a real-time clock, it is possible. I'm not sure you'll learn much about how in this episode, so to speak, but you can always reach out and I'll clue you in. Okay, so I think the first question a lot of people have when they hear the term real-time clock is, real time? Is what makes it real? Why is it not fake time? Or what kind of time is fake? Or, something along those lines. I think basically the important distinction is, often when you're dealing with electronics, especially digital electronics, computers, when you use the term clock, you're usually not so much wondering what time it is as you're looking for a signal that kind of just repeats at a periodic rate, usually a pretty fast periodic rate. It's kind of like a metronome for musical reference there, or it's like the guy that sits at the front of the rowboat and goes stroke, 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 stroke. It's just kind of it's more of a signal for synchronization than anything. But any of the other reference I would say for that is it's really literally just a tick-tock, 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 or just tick, 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 if you like stuff that sounds more like a bomb reference. But so quite often you talk about, well, where's your clock circuit on a computer or whatever? You're talking about something that, like you said, it's like more of a metronome. So, okay, so what is real time in this case? So when we say real-time clock, we're really talking about, you could replace a real-time clock to wall clock time, or a wall clock, or wall style clock, or something like that. It's like a clock in the real world. And so instead of just saying it's been 36 ticks, you want to say it's, 2:30 or something like that, right? And so, like I said, literally it's like it's the equivalent of a wall clock for your computer. And so while we're at it, since it uses that term real time in a sort of a computer sciencey scenario, the other thing you'll hear, other time in the kind of a computer sciencey scenario, you'll hear the term real time is like for a real time operating system or a real time scheduler or something along those lines. And in that case, real time really doesn't have anything to do with a real-time clock. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those real-time systems, probably most of them don't even have a real-time clock, ironically, because they were much more concerned about the metronome style of clocks, getting things out in a certain number of ticks. But at some point, when you use the term real-time for operating systems, you're talking about an operating system that can meet certain scheduling guarantees. And while the original specification for what those guarantees need to be might be specified in real-time terms, like you need to meet this requirement within 1 microsecond or something like that, ultimately it's really no different than saying you need to meet this requirement in 6 clock ticks or whatever. So it's sort of the real time is sort of the same and sort of different, and ultimately it's different for this discussion because we're talking about real-time clocks, not real-time operating systems. Although a certain real-time operating system does support real-time clocks that we'll be interested to hear about. Of course, that's Nitrous 9. All right, so let's just move on. We're talking about adding hardware to the CoCo. And so what sort of interface is that going to be? There's a number of interface styles that can be used to add a real-time clock chip in a computer system. I'm sure you could hang one off of a serial port to some degree, depending on how coarse the timing is allowed to be for your real-time clock. But we're not going to talk about nothing. We're not going to talk about anything that gets out to the point of being a serial port, but talking about interfaces in terms of bits, wires or pins that you might solder down to a board that you're interfacing to a microprocessor. Okay? Kind of the most obvious way one would probably first think to connect to a real-time clock is in a sort of a standard memory style, a memory mapped interface is just like any other thing, just like a serial port or a parallel port or just about anything that you normally would connect. And, on the Z80 or whatever, you might use I.O. instructions instead of memory instructions, but since we don't have I.O. instructions on the 6809, it'll all be memory instructions, right? So, a memory style device. And, okay, what's probably the most common or most well-known real-time clock chip as an example of this would be the it's Motorola MC146818. And this was the real-time clock chip that was originally in the IBM PC-AT. And so therefore it's pretty much the standard for PC clock chips for the past 30 years or whatever. Now, not too many of these individual chips are installed anymore, but what you end up is an emulation or not really an emulation, but a direct implementation of that same register set is put onto the chipsets for basically anything that pretends to be a PC or like a PC nowadays. So anyway, so that's the MC146818. Uses a memory style interface, so literally you just read and write or load and store kind of instructions to access it. And it's combined the real-time clock operation with CMOS RAM. So you hear about CMOS memory on your PC. You usually use that to save information for like your BIOS configuration. And some of you may have different times messed around with that either through the BIOS utility itself, or maybe like I had a laptop one time that would only work with certain wireless chips, and I used a utility to modify something in the CMOS RAM that would turn off that check, and so I could use other wireless chips or whatever. Maybe you've done something like that. So this chip basically identifies, I think it's a total of like 64 memory locations for register rights, register accesses on this chip. Something like, so about 10 of them I think are for referencing time and date. About 4 I think that are for control purposes. Not really sure off the top of my head what the control things are, but they're there for, so the chip can also like generate timer interrupts and stuff like that, like alarms or whatever, or can output a square wave. And so there's some registers for controlling that. And then there's 50 locations that are just memory. And because the whole thing is battery backed up, then you can write out there and the memory stays there. And so that's pretty handy for what it's usually used for. CMOS setting up the boot parameters for your PC. Okay, so very cool. I think this has probably been interfaced to the CoCo at one time or another. I'm not exactly sure. I can't cite an example. I think somebody told me it had been, but I don't know which part or which rare item you need to be searching eBay to find. But there you go. It's an obvious way to interface a hardware device to a computer, just like any other kind of memory access or memory map device. But there are other ways, much more common, at least especially with regard to the CoCo, and common on the Tandy 1000. I've seen it on a number of embedded systems where the real-time clock portion, I don't know if it's added as an afterthought or just convenient to not have to separately decode addresses for this other device. I mean, you will save a little bit of glue logic using a smartwatch style device. And so I mentioned the DS1216, particularly the DS1216E is what I was using. There's also the DS1315, which operates extremely similarly. I'm not exactly sure if they work exactly the same or not, but they certainly work in the same fashion. I don't know if you can use exactly the same software. Anyway, I get different reports on that. But so the smartwatch style devices, they just kind of hang out. And like I said, the DS1216E in particular was built into a socket. And so you'd unplug a ROM from a socket on the motherboard or whatever board, and plug the ROM on top of this socket and plug the whole assembly back down where the original ROM was. Which means if you want to access that chip, you have to access it, like the ROM it's replacing, which would be okay, I guess. But kind of the way it's sold is that it doesn't really interfere. And so how does that work? And so rather than just mapping out whatever and replacing it with this new clock chip, which would be what you get with like the PC style of clock chip, mostly it just passes through accesses. And so if you access that socket, you're literally talking to the ROM chip on top. But what it does is it monitors a couple of the address pins. When you access basically offsets into the memory, when you access offsets into the memory, it reads one of the address pins, it reads that in as a serial bit stream, almost like a little serial port. It has a sequence that it is looking for and matching against as those bits come in. And it's a fairly long sequence. Several about 8 bytes, 16, I don't know how many off the top of my head. Sorry, I didn't research well enough. But it's significant. It's a lengthy sequence. If one of the bits doesn't match, it basically resets and starts looking again for the next sequence. But if you get all the way through the sequence, the socket basically says, okay, well, it means to read the clock. And so it basically doesn't pass through the accesses after that. It passes them through to the clock circuit itself that's embedded in the little socket. And as you continue to do reads, it feeds out that serial bit stream, on one of the data lines, and you have to reassemble it or whatever. And if you want to do writing, again, it'll monitor one of the address lines as a serial bit stream for input. And so you read instructions in a certain sequence to accomplish the rights for setting the clock. It's kind of a neat, ingenious sort of idea, but, like I said, it takes some software to do it. And like I said, this is the DS1216, the DS1315, both are this sort of smartwatch design. There's variations on the 1216 and certainly on the 1315 that are not embedded in a little socket like I was talking about. They might be put on a separate board. I think the old TC3 SCSI controller from Cloud9 had a 1315 on it. It wasn't just embedded in a socket or whatever, but it's still accessed in that similar fashion. Now this is kind of cool because you don't actually need a write signal to be able to write, be able to set the clock time. If you're going to put something on a cartridge on the CoCo, it's going to sit out there at that C000 address. But the CoCo itself, maybe on the very earliest models, but certainly the later, even the CoCo 1s and all the CoCo 2s and all the CoCo 3s, they don't generate a write signal for any of the cartridge accesses, and they don't pass it along to the cartridge at least. So you would not literally be able to write out to, like I say, the PC style of RTC on a cartridge, or at least not without adding extra decoding logic on your cartridge. So being able to piggyback on that ROM access like that is a really pretty handy, kind of clever thing. When Tandy cloned the PC Junior to make the Tandy 1000, I'm not sure. I don't know my PC timeline well enough to know if the Junior came before the AT or not. So I don't even know if the AT had been established as a standard for that one. So there may have been nowhere else to put, or at least without putting your PC compatibility at risk for the Tandy 1000. But anyway, the smartwatch is a cool way to do things. It does take a little extra thinking in your software. You don't just go out and read from a location, but it's very effective. Now, how else would you might attach a memory? Well, just like you might imagine, any way that you could attach a device to the CoCo or to any other computer, there's probably a chip out there for a real-time clock chip that's using that. So in the past, we talked about I2C, SPI. Definitely the DS1307 is a real-time clock chip that connects via I2C. There is one, certainly, I'm sure there's more than one, but there are definitely ones for SPI. For example, the M41T93, which I don't know anything about, might be the worst clock chip ever, but I looked it up and it does exist. So if somebody ever does successfully implement I2C or SPI in a general fashion for the CoCo cartridge bus, you could add real-time clocks to that. Very exciting. Okay, so how do these chips, while we're still talking about hardware, how do these chips actually keep time? They're not just reading signals from satellites or anything like that. I guess nowadays you could do that if you really wanted to. But for the most part, these chips are kind of standalone devices. You set the clock just like you set the clock beside your bed or whatever. But how do they keep time? Well, they have a little clocking circuit there, and the clock circuit, like the metronome style clocking circuit, tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. They keep time using what's called a standard clock crystal, and it's really the same kind of crystal that you would find, in a quartz watch. And those clocks are pretty easy to. Those crystals are pretty easy to find anywhere, cheap, and they're calibrated to run at 32,768 hertz, which is it's 15 bits, or the 16th bit. It rolls over at 15 bit. 15 bits rolls over to at the 32,768. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so quite often when you find one of these chips on a board, you'll have the little clock style crystal, and like I said, it might look something like what happens when you take your watch apart, what you look on the inside there. Okay, I already mentioned that like the PC style real-time clock chip supports some CMOS RAM associated with it. Quite often, various kinds of real-time clock chips will have some feature or another to support CMOS or static RAM or battery-backed RAM associated with the device. It's something, if you're interested, if you want to add a chip, you may want to look for that capability. How it works and how it's accessed is going to depend on what chip you're using, what kind of bus connection it has, whatever. You have to be aware of that on your own. But just so you know, it is something that quite often can be found. So if you have a reason to add a real-time clock chip to something that people would want on their CoCo, you might also be able to add a way to have a long-term memory capability on the same chip, or associated with the same device at least. So with all that said, how do you actually use one of these chips? Well, some people think, or seem to think, that you just plug in the device and suddenly you're able to keep time and it's all great. Hopefully they don't think that very much, or at least they're not thinking very hard. So there's no magic, of course. The hardware by itself, like most hardware, basically does nothing. And so you need some kind of software to access your real-time clock chip. Now, if you're writing an application or using CoCo for something in particular, whatever you're doing there, you could just put the software into your application and say you wanted to make a neon sign or an LED sign that displayed the current time and date or something like that. Well, then your software could read the real-time clock and maybe provide a way to set it. You could display it, whatever. No problem, no big deal. You do have to write the software. And of course, that is the same kind of problems as any other direct access to hardware, in that, if you change the hardware at any point, or if somebody else is trying to replicate your project, they have to use the exact same hardware, or they have to rewrite the software. So mass production becomes a problem, right? Typically what you'll have with a real-time clock is the software that uses it will somehow be built into an operating system. Usually when we cross the divide from just do whatever to run an operating system, in the CoCo world, obviously the most common operating system that we would think to run is typically OS 9 or today Nitrous 9. And of course, if you are using certainly any kind of vintage real-time clock hardware, assuming it still works, Nitrous 9 will have software that will work with your real-time clock. And if you have something new or different, I'm sure you can find a way to get a driver written for Nitrous 9 that will use your real-time clock hardware, and everything will just work. And then you'll get timestamps on your file system entries, and probably have calendar apps at work or alarms or whatever. I don't know what's out there, but whatever's out there will just work with your software, with just a matter of, you won't have to change most of the software, you'll just have to add a driver for your hardware. So, Nitrous 9, you're set. Mostly set. In terms of disk extended color basic style of environments, stock disk extended color basic did not know anything about real-time clocks. But, as you know, there were a number of variants available back in the day, whether there's JDOS or RGB DOS or whatever, and one of them is called ADOS, and in particular ADOS 3 had support for real-time clock access, and it was again sort of driver based, although it's a little more primitive, I guess, in that you build a chunk of software and you have a program that fits it in to a ROM image for you. It's a lot like what you might do in a driver-based operating system. It's just not called that. Anyway, I have printed source code from the smartwatch drivers that do that, and I've been meaning to get that converted over to something machine readable at least. But anyway, if you're trying to get something out and want to support ADOS, I might be able to help. Our Art Flexer is still out there and still monitoring the community, so he might be able to help, and he'd probably be even more helpful than me. Anyway, but so for running ADOS 3, and so basically what I think that one, I think that one creates a date dollar, pseudo variable, almost like the timer thing that's available for basically for tick counting or whatever. And so you can just access that string variable, and it'll just always be up to date with the current date. Also, Robert Galt has some software for the Disk Extended Color Basic style of systems. It's compatible with, like I said, plain Disk Extended Color Basic, and it should be compatible with ADOS and JDOS and whatever else too, I would imagine. Could be wrong, but it makes sense to me. And so that one, it does load an extension, and so it may just only work with Disk Extended Color Basic. But anyway, it loads an extension, and like I said, that one provides the date dollar string variable for accessing the real-time clock, and I assume that one has to be specific to whatever hardware you're using. Anyway, and again, Dr. Galt's still out there. He might be able to help you if you want to pick some oddball hardware or your own custom hardware or whatever. He might be able to help you get that supported as well. As for other operating systems that are out there, I'm sure there's bound to be some people in the community using Flex. I'm not sure why Flex wasn't more popular than it seems to have been for the CoCo, but that's history. But it is out there. It's an operating system with a lot of software available. There might be somebody running that on their CoCo. I have no idea what kind of real-time clock support exists for Flex, and if it's even appropriate. I don't know if their file system supports time and date stamps or whatever. But if it does, it would be nice if it supported real-time clocks. If you know, feedback at cococrew.org. I'd love to hear you. Let me know. Fusix, whatever. It's kind of new. I doubt if they've concentrated much on real-time clock support. It seems like the kind of thing that would be nice to have. They're covering a lot of systems. It might be that RTC support is built into that kernel, but I don't know if they're supporting it on the CoCo 3 or whatever, any of the CoCo platforms yet. So I don't know. I have to reach out to Brett Gordon and see. Brett, why don't you send us an email? Let us know. And so what else is out there operating system-wise on the CoCo? Having a little trouble thinking of anything right now. There's bound to be some stuff. If nothing else, there's probably some like standalone Lisp things that would kind of cover the idea of an operating system at least. I wonder if there's any of the Lisp interpreters, or not Lisp, really thinking about Forth, but Lisp as well. I wonder if any of those support real-time clocks. That'd be cool to hear. So I guess this is turning into a big request for feedback for anybody who knows about real-time clock support in software, system-style software, outside of what's been covered here. Like I said, the past couple of months, the real-time clock discussion has been a bit fever-pitched in the community. They are cool to have, certainly nice. For a system, if I was suddenly transported back to 1988, I would definitely want a real-time clock in my CoCo, just because it's nice to be able to keep tabs of file system access and whatever, or just be able to keep a clock on your desktop that'll tell you what time it is. In terms of using a CoCo today, it's not as clear to me that a real-time clock is much of an asset. It doesn't hurt anything, but unless you have a specific application that needs to know the time, I'm not sure that having a real-time clock plugged in while you go off to play Popstar Pilot or whatever, I'm not sure it makes much difference. Your mileage may vary. Please let me know how I'm wrong. Okay, well, that's probably long enough for me. I'm going to let you go. Thank you for listening. CoCo forever. All right, thanks. Take care.
Does your color computer know what time it is? Well, now it can with the RTC10 real-time clock. The RTC10 is a quartz-based time-date clock contained in a compact ROM case. The included 2-year-plus replaceable battery keeps time accurate when the computer is off and even when the cartridge is unplugged. It can be used with or without a multi-slot unit. The included software allows you to set the clock as well as display time and date in the upper right corner of the video screen. The RTC10 makes it simple to access the time and date with just a few basic peaks.
It's compatible with any 16K or greater extended or non-extended color computer. The RTC-10 comes completely assembled, tested, and ready to plug in and use. The RTC-10 real-time clock. Only $89 from Custom Computer Products. Goshen, New York.
All right, Frank, I've finished checking the doors from the outside. You're all set for your shift. See you tomorrow.
Good night, Ted. Being the night watchman can be a lonely job. But being the night watchman at a Radio Shack warehouse is an entirely different story. Frank can check out the newest realistic stereo receivers and Optimus speakers. Or the Concert-Mate 600 polyphonic keyboard. And Frank gets to see all the latest Tandy color computers and accessories before you do. Like the new 128K Tandy Color Computer 3 with CM8 RGB analog color monitor. Frank's biggest challenge? Remembering when it's quitting time. Already? Radio Shack, America's technology store.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Neil's Corner on the CoCo Crew Podcast, episode 46. As of the time recording this, it is late March 2019, and you know what that means. It is just a tad over a month until CoCo Fest. Alright, on this month's segment, I'm excited to be reviewing a new game for your CoCo. The game is called Dungeon Crawl, and that's exactly what it is. Dungeon Crawl is a classic real-time fantasy role-playing game. You create a character and explore through the dungeons. As you go on your quest, you will slowly build your character up, getting stronger, gain more powerful spells, and upgrade your equipment. This game is coded by Paul Shoemaker, and was just released earlier this year. It will run on any color computer with a minimum of 64K memory, and it uses the P-Mode 4 high-res screen, but does not utilize the red and blue artifact colors in its artwork. So because of this, the game looks extra glorious with no artifacting, such as on a Color Computer 3 using an RGB monitor, or a Color Computer 1 and 2 with a CoCo VGA installed with its artifact colors disabled. Dungeon Crawl is based on the game Telengard from 1982 by Avalon Hill. I was not aware of that game, probably because back in the day, I was never really into RPGs. As of recent, I've taken a strong liking to them. Believe it or not, this game was coded in Extended Color Basic with 3 assembly language subroutines. I reached out to Paul to purchase a copy of this game, and I must say I was highly surprised when it showed up. The package presentation is absolutely incredible. It comes in a paper envelope with 2 floppy disks, a play disc, and a map disc. Also comes with a very detailed, well-written manual explaining the game and all the different creatures you will come across in the dungeon. Last but not least, the package includes a Spell Stones cue card. The attention to detail is amazing. Even the floppy disks have the classic-looking Tandy sticker labels on them. The game itself does not disappoint either. This is a top-notch quality RPG-style game that could have been sold at local Radio Shacks hands down. Another cool thing to note is that the game takes advantage of dual floppy drive setups. You put the play disc in drive 0 and the map disc in drive 1. It will automatically load and save data as you play the game. If you are into RPGs, or even just slightly, I highly recommend supporting Paul and purchasing this game from him. You can buy the digital download version only, where Paul will send you the manual in PDF form and the data discs. You can use them on a CoCo STC or Super IDE, or you can go all out and create your own floppy disks. Or if you want, you can purchase the physical copy and Paul will ship it to you. He will also email you the digital version as well, so if you get antsy and want to play the game immediately before your mail arrives, you can. Well, there you have it, another brand new game for your color computer. I will make sure to get Paul's contact information in the show notes, in case you want to purchase this game from him. Who would have guessed years ago that in 2019 you can still buy new games for your CoCo? Well, until next month, happy CoCo gaming.
Here's a color computer monitor bargain from your nearby Radio Shack. Save $50 on our exclusive Tandy CM8 RGB analog color monitor. Only $249.95 during this sale. It's designed specifically for the Color Computer 3. It's a perfect complement to the superb graphics capabilities of the Color Computer 3 and produces sharp, crisp text and dazzling graphs and illustrations. The sale price Tandy CM8 color monitor. Only at Radio Shack, a Tandy company.
Well, it's that time again where we have to say goodbye until next month. The end of episode 46 has come. We hope you enjoyed this month's show. I'd personally like to thank our host, John Linville, for gathering all the latest news articles and providing us with another fantastic tech segment. I'd also like to thank Mike Rowan for creating those amazing commercials and doing the editing on this podcast. Can't forget to thank Boise for being a part of the show and now creating his own historian segment. I'd also like to thank Ron Klein for being a full-time part of the show now. Thanks goes out to everyone who participated in the roundtable discussion this month. A big thanks goes out to David Wiens for loaning us some of your time to record an interview with you. Sorry I couldn't attend this one, but I must say I really enjoyed hearing it, as floppy drives are one of my favorite parts of retro computing. Last but not least, I'd like to thank all of you who listen and support us each month. Keep your feedback coming in. We really do like to hear from you. Until next month, retro and CoCo forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
CoCo. CoCo. CoCo.
Dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway? It's a blast from the past.
Dance, dance, dance. Dance, dance, dance. CoCo. CoCo.